And we are live on our pre-show for today's, what are we doing today? We're doing the N10-008 Network Plus study group. I know what we're doing. No, that's exactly what I have set up. No, really. I've really been working on this only for a week to only forget exactly what we're doing the moment we go live, which is how it should be, I think. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the pre-show. I'm kind of getting things ready here, checking our numbers. Everything looks good. Our 3% cache rate is exactly where it needs to be. If that goes up, our network connection is down or having problems. Right now, it looks pretty good. It's a clear, beautiful day, although it's supposed to rain later. But maybe the network connections will be happier today than they've been in the past. We've got live stream going. We've got recordings going down here. You can see one of my Cylons going. The other's up here. You can't see it. That Cylon is going. Looks pretty good. We got about 9 minutes before we get started on the live show. Hey, chat room. Welcome. Thanks for being here. What else do we need to have ready? I've got questions. I've got answers. I've got details. We've got video here, video here. I think we're in pretty good shape. There's a lot happening right here at this desk, isn't it? There's a lot of stuff crammed into one desk right here. It's all happening right at the moment. So we're getting there. I think we're in pretty good shape. Let's do a quick check on that. That's just fine. We'll take it. That looks fine. Yep, that looks really good. All right, let's pause this because I don't need another video display going here. Yet another live stream going. Hey, chat room, thanks for being here. We're doing all Network Plus today. It's from the N10-008 Network Plus. I've got all questions in the first hour, and then I'll open up the chat room for questions in the second hour. Although some of you can ask questions now. We're in the pre-show, and everything seems to be ready to go. This is not coffee, thankfully. That is a big container, isn't it? That is a large container of in this case, lemonade. We're doing lemonade today. We're trying not to have so much caffeine during the day, so we're trying something a little bit healthier. And it's diet lemonade. So I'm being good to myself. So not a mega pint of coffee. Wouldn't that be something, though? Like this 64-ounce coffee. No, that would just be ridiculous. Nobody wants that. It's relatively dark there. It's obviously not dark behind me because I have lights on me. You can kind of see some of the spill right here at the top. See how that's kind of hazy up in this corner? That's because there's a light right there. You can kind of see the light reflecting off my hand. So there's a light right there. I've been trying to think about doing the lights a little bit different. But the rest of the room is relatively dark. I close I have curtains that go around all the windows and the doors. And that way I have exactly the same lighting every time. I don't have to constantly adjust things to do that. So it's one of those where what I really need to do is turn those lights around. I know you can't see it here, but they're relatively harsh on me. Although this is very flat. It's not great lighting. You can at least see me, which is good, but there is sort of just a flatness to it. There's no shadows here. Now I could adjust that and change it. And for instance, if we wanted a different view, I could always turn, one of these off. Can I turn one of them off? Is it going to go up? There we go. That's a little too moody, isn't it? How about the other one? We'll turn off the key. No, that's no good. So you see, I need to work with this. What I'm thinking of doing is turning those around and then having reflectors that come back on me. And that would sort of brighten things up. And then I could use a separate light off the side to kind of give a little bit of shadow and a little bit of depth. Because right now, there's just not any depth. I'm not trying to flex my biceps. I'm flexing them. It's the gun show, everybody. It's the very small gun with very tiny little bullets. But we're getting there. Got to hit the gym, right? You got to lift up the heavy things and put the heavy things back down again. That's what it takes. So that's what I try to do. PG Bluster in the chat room with a $5 super chat right out of the gate. Haven't even technically started the study group yet. With the $5 super chat, PG says, passed my Security Plus in June, just started doing Network Plus work. you're doing it in the same order I did. Thanks for your guidance. That's Glum Hippo. That's who that is. Thank you for the $5 super chat, Glum. Don't be glum, chum. Be happy. I mean, you're a hippo. You're the most dangerous animal in the jungle. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to get anywhere near a hippo. They're angry, dangerous animals. See, not actually glum. See, that's good. A not so glum hippo. We've got, and thank you for the super chat as well. They are absolutely appreciated, and thank you for your support. We're able to kind of keep these lights on thanks to those. So it all works out very well. An anagram of your name. All right, everybody get to work. That's somebody's got to figure it out. Philip, no. Michael, no. Charlie, no. We'll have to keep working on that. It's our difficult problem to solve today. Jan in the chat room passed A+ Core 1 and 2 using Professor Messer for study. Thank you so much. Congratulations on your Core 1 and 2. And now you're, of course, your A+ certification. This is sort of this interesting time. I know we're doing Network Plus today, but it's an interesting time for A+ because we're in this transition period and we're almost at about 2 months before that that older version of A+ is retired. So it should be pretty good. Should work pretty well. A scary thing I found on YouTube is the OMG cable that has a hidden hotspot built into the USB. Absolutely built into the USB. They can do a lot of really interesting things just built into what looks like a standard USB charging cable or USB connection cable. In fact, you could swap them out and you suddenly have yours in there. There's keyloggers and hotspots and data siphoning technologies, software and hardware built into those cables. It's really remarkable. So don't plug into any USB you don't know. That's just don't do it. You know, I used to just not even think about, oh, there's a USB connection. Let's get some power. You don't want to do that. Not a great idea. Unless you have an adapter that will remove the data lines but keep the power lines. And then you're fine until we find some type of exploit that works on the power lines. And then we're off to the races again. So what can we do? I guess we carry around our own equipment, our own power, and do it that way. I don't know of another way to do it. That seems to be the best way to do it. We'll have to see. I have to see how that works. Okay, let's see what's next on our list today. I think I've got all of this ready to go. We got 2 minutes, as you can see by our countdown clock. Presentation looks good. I think we can, I'm going to wait to start that. Video and audio looks fine. I think we're in pretty good shape. I think we're pretty much ready to go. I have so much I need to redo in this studio. There's the, you can see over on this side is the new studio, the Apple Studio. I got to put that down here with all of the dust. I need to dust first and then put it down there and get it out of the way. I need to put my audio down there as well. I never touched the audio, so it needs to go in there. Hey, Scotland, thanks for being here. Where are you in Scotland? I would like to know. I need to know these things. We've got a lot to go through today. We've got all new questions, of course, because I write all new questions every month for all of these. So, except for this first one. So, if you're already looking at the first question, it might look familiar. But we always do the first question as a rewind question. The Highlands near Skye. Yeah, I've been to the Isle of Skye or been near the Isle of Skye. There is a data center near that for the Royal Bank of Scotland. I've been in that data center. So I came close. I met people from there. I spent most of my time in the city of Edinburgh, but it was fantastic. What a great trip. And then that was the trip I was there for work. And then there was another trip I went a few years ago for pleasure. And it was fantastic. Had such a good time. Oh, it's almost, speaking of time, speaking of which, let's get a green light. Green light. Green light. There we go. That looks good. This looks good. I think We are about ready to get started. Let's see if we can take this down a notch. Okay. That means it's top of the hour, everybody. Let's see if we can get a live stream going. Let's start things up. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2022 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. This is our study group where in this first hour, I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And if you are here and live and online, you can answer them interactively along with everyone else who's watching. If you're not here live and online, and you're just online, then you can follow along with us. Nothing changes for you, but you'll see what I mean in just a moment. We'll step through a number of different options of the things that you're able to do. First, if you are here live, you can participate by popping open a new browser window and going to this URL, professormesser.com/QA. That is the URL. There'll be a question waiting for you when you go to that link. If you'd like to use an app, and of course you do, you want to download the Socrative student app from your favorite app store. There will be a prompt on that to ask you for a room name. And the room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, because if you don't, you'll be in a room with no questions. But if you do spell it right, you'll be in the room with the questions. And the question should say to you, a network administrator has configured a single wireless network to extend across multiple access points in a single building. Which of the following would best describe this configuration? Would that be 802.1q, WPA3, MAC filtering, MU-MIMO, or ESSID? Now, of course, our ongoing rule here is not to answer in the chat room. You want to go to the link that is now on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. We're going to come back to this question in just a bit, but dwell over what the answer might be for that. And we'll have a look at what the possible solution to that problem might be in just a moment. Well, we've got a lot to go through today, but remember that we do one of these every month. We have pop quizzes, study groups, everything's on the website. But of course, you can always follow us on Twitter to know what's going on at professormesser.com/Twitter. We also have a weekly pop quiz question you can view on Instagram. That's at professormesser.com/Instagram. And of course, our YouTube channel. And the best way to get there is professormesser.com/YouTube. What? You're not a subscriber? You haven't clicked the bell yet? Now's your opportunity. Pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/YouTube. So lots to talk about along those lines. And if you do hop over to those, you'll be able to answer some of these questions that are there. Now, remember that we are now in August. Last month, we saw the end of the N10-007. It was retired in, I guess it was retired in June. Or was that July? Now it seems like forever ago, but it's no longer available. The only exam you can take today is the N10-008. That is the Network Plus exam you should be studying for. That is the version that all of your study materials should say. So make sure you check your books, your videos, and anything else you're using. Make sure they are specifically written for the N10-008 exam. That's very important. This was released in September of last year, which means it will probably retire somewhere around March of 2025. There is quite a bit to study on this exam. There are a set of exam objectives. We'll talk about those later on in this study group, but a lot to go through and a lot of things you can work through to be able to do this. Now, some of you are mentioning on Pearson VUE, it still lets you select the N10-007. That's because in non-English speaking countries, the N10-007 is still an active certification. So if you don't speak English, I guess you could opt to take those particular exams. But for most of us who are on this particular presentation, you're probably going to take the N10-008. And eventually, I think end of the year, those finally phase out and retire as well. So make sure that you pick the right set of exam objectives to study from. Don't forget that on our website, we have a complete Network Plus course. Every video in that course is available for you to watch for free. I also have downloadable versions of those videos in my Success Bundle. This also includes my course notes. It includes audio replays, my exam hacks ebook. You get a great little USB key. I can't grab when I do this backwards. So there's USB key I'll send you with everything on it, along with printed versions of the course notes. Those are available on my website. And if you just wanted one of these things, like the course notes by themselves, you can always do that as well, or just download the audio by itself. Find that at professormesser.com/netsuccess. There's also replays of this study group available in podcast format. It's an audio-only replay. You can find that at professormesser.com/podcast, and it's available for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. All the study groups we do are available on that link, professormesser.com/podcast. We also have a video replay available immediately afterwards. It simply takes a few minutes to render on the YouTube side, and then it's available for you to watch almost immediately. I don't have to do anything. If you look through the YouTube video description, you'll notice tomorrow that suddenly timestamps have shown up that give you an idea of when things are happening in the video, and you can simply click the timestamp to go exactly to that point in the video where you might be looking for a question or an answer or something that someone may have asked about. That's all available in the YouTube video description. Thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who has to listen to this whole thing. Hi, Lori. She's watching the replay on the video and on the chat. So you might want to thank Lori for doing that. She has been able to go back years with these YouTube video descriptions, and hopefully that helps you find the things you're looking for as well. We also have a chat available in our Discord server. The Discord server is just available 24/7. So when we're not doing a live stream, we're always in Discord doing something. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord, or simply click the links that are in the upper right on professormesser.com. We, of course, at some point, you're going to need to take the Network Plus exam. And there is an opportunity to get a discount. Why would you pay full price to take the exam by going to the Pearson VUE site? You could go to the Professor Messer website and get a voucher at a discounted rate. You can find those at professormesser.com/vouchers. These are currently available for people that are taking their exams in the U.S., Canada, and some of the U.S. territories. Now, if you purchase your voucher from my website, not only is the voucher discounted, I'll give you something for free. It's my Exam Hacks ebook. That Exam Hacks ebook is a list of tips and tricks, maybe some of them you thought about, maybe some of them you haven't, that might give you a couple of extra points on your exam. There are also some great strategies to use when you're taking your exam that can also help with that final score. That is available for free when you purchase the voucher on my website. Now let's have a look at that question I asked earlier. That question asked, a network administrator has configured a single wireless network to extend across multiple access points in a single building. Which of the following would best describe this configuration? Would it be 802.1q, WPA3, MAC filtering, MU-MIMO, or ESSID? Let's see how you did on this question. You can see that 56% of you chose ESSID. That's a pretty solid number. 18% said .1q, 15% said multi-user MIMO, 10% said WPA3, and only 1% said MAC filtering. It's kind of sad, isn't it? Only one. ESSID came in at 56%. That's a pretty good number. ESSID is the extended set identifier, extended service set identifier. There's two S's in there. The ESSID is an interesting configuration. Here is exactly the scenario we're talking about here, where there are multiple access points in a building. Obviously, those different access points will have different MAC addresses. In the world of 802.11 wireless networking, we refer to these MAC addresses as basic service set identifiers, or BSSIDs. Those BSSIDs obviously are different between those two, but notice the SSID, which is the name of the wireless network, is identical between those two. So they both have exactly the same SSID. This means that if you're on your phone and you're connected to a particular access point using that SSID, and then you walk to the other side of the building, there you are walking, you walked very quickly. you will suddenly find that you're out of range of that original access point. Your phone will search around for another access point with that same name and automatically connect to it. So that is the functionality associated with an extended service set, or an ESS. And that's why that ESS ID is so important. And that's why ESS ID was the correct answer in this case as well. It would not be multi-user MIMO. That's used to be able to transmit to multiple devices simultaneously in a wireless network, not follow a device as it moves from access point to access point. 802.1q is a standard for encapsulating data across multiple VLANs in a single link or trunk between different switches. 802.1q is not, generally speaking, a wireless technology that moves a device from access point to access point. WPA3 is a security protocol. Now, you may be familiar with WPA2. WPA3 is the latest version of that. So if you have a relatively new access point, it probably supports WPA3. There might even be upgrades for WPA3 that you could put on your existing access point. And then, of course, there's MAC filtering. Hardly anyone chose that one, but that is allowing or disallowing access through this device based on the MAC addresses that are being used. Well, in this particular case, we're not dealing with access points restricting or allowing traffic. We're just trying to move from access point to access point. And in that case, it is the extended service set identifier that allows you to do that. And 57% of you chose that option as well. You got that one absolutely right. Well done. I think that gets us going. That is our rewind question. So that's one we did last month. And I think you did a little bit better this month than you did last month on that one. Now let's do some new questions. We have all new questions in this study group, things you've never seen before because, well, I just wrote them and put them in there. So Google doesn't know about them. You've never seen them before. So we're going to see how you do. But before we do a multiple choice-based question like this one, I'd like to jump over and do a performance-based question. Performance-based questions, for those of you that may not have taken a CompTIA exam before, the first handful of questions you get on the exam are not multiple choice. Multiple choice questions are just like the one we just did. So you've got a question and then multiple choices to choose from to identify the correct answer. Now that means in this particular case, you had a 20% chance of getting that question right, even if you didn't know the answer. You could take a guess, and it's a 20% chance that you may have identified the correct answer with that one. Performance-based questions, though, they don't really allow you to do that. Performance-based questions might be drag and drop. They might be fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. It might be a matching or a question you have to put things in a particular order. You just never know what they're going to put there. But the important thing to remember is performance-based questions are all pulling this information from your exam objectives. It's just a different way to ask a question of information that you've already studied. So they're not giving you some type of information you've never seen before. They're just asking the question in a very unique and sometimes very straightforward way. So let's do a performance-based question. Before we do, I want to thank Randy in the chat room with the $10 super chat. Randy says, passed A+ net last month as a result of studying with you. Thank you. Practice tests were indispensable. I'm sure your forthcoming practice tests for Network Plus, hopefully we see those one day, will be equally indispensable. Hopefully it will be in the coming months. Will be a Network Plus practice tests. I sure hope so. Where you've been asking for them, I would like to write some for you. So we'll work on that for sure. It is on the list and it's on the calendar. So that's the important part. So thank you, Randy, for the $10 super chat and for your vote for getting those Network Plus practice exams done as quickly as possible. Great Honor in the chat room with another $10 super chat. Thank you for that as well. Great Honor says, got my Network Plus a couple of weeks ago with a score 727. I think you studied exactly the right amount. Great Honor. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Now I have my A+ and Network Plus. What a journey. Absolutely massive shout out to Professor Messer and the Discord community. Absolutely. You guys rule. Our Discord group is fantastic. I'm not always in there. There are times when I occasionally have to sleep. So there are folks in there that can also help with those questions. It's a great community. If you're not part of it, you can find it at professormesser.com/Discord. Thank you, Great Honor, for the $10 super chat, and congratulations on your A+ and now your Network Plus as well. And lastly, I'll mention Eric in the chat room with a $1.99 super chat who says, I hope so too. And I think he was responding to something else that was coming up there. But Eric, thank you also for the super chat, and best of luck with your Network Plus studies as well. Let's do that performance-based question I mentioned. This one is sort of a fill in the blank, but probably more of a matching. You'll see what I mean. Remember, do not answer this in the chat room. You want to go to the link that's on the bottom of your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Oh, Eric was referring to the practice exams. Thank you, Eric. I feel you. We'll get there. This question, however, I'm calling it a fill in the blank, but it sort of is and it sort of isn't. We'll see how we do. The question asks, associate an OSI layer to each description. And I have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different descriptions. Let's go through each one of those. The first is the default gateway of a device is 192.168.1.1. What OSI layer is associated with that? That's all we're looking for. I'll even give you a hint. I just need a number. Just tell me which layer it is. You don't need, or you could describe the layer. If you happen to know the name of the layer, I will accept that as well. The next description is all traffic matching TCP 443 is allowed through a firewall. The next description, the broadcast address of a subnet is FFFFFF, FFFFF. That's a lot of Fs. A bad cable has increased the number of CRC errors. What particular OSI layer does that happen to be? And the last one, a login has failed due to an invalid password. What layer is that? Now, if you think you know the answers, do not put the answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to visit that link that's on your page, professormesser.com/QA. Go directly to that link. And you don't even have to type these in. You can just put in, if you think they are all OSI layer 10, you would put in 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. See how that works? Did I give something away there? I don't think I did. I think I may be spoofing a bit. Let's go through each one of those for you listening on the podcast side. Associate an OSI layer to each subscription. The first one, the default gateway of a device is 192.168.1.1. All traffic matching TCP 443 is allowed through a firewall. The broadcast address of a subnet is all Fs. A bad cable has increased the number of CRC errors, and a login has failed due to an invalid password. So figure out what the OSI layer might be, associate that one, and we'll see how it goes. And Kenny in the chat room saying, I prefer the TCP/IP model. Well, the TCP/IP model, unfortunately, never really caught on. In fact, the only place you will see the TCP/IP model used is in classes that teach the TCP/IP model. Today, that's the only reason the TCP/IP model exists, is for people to talk about the TCP/IP model. We never use that model in practical terms. And it's sort of the way the industry worked, the way the timing worked, is that the OSI protocol didn't catch on, but the OSI model did. The TCP/IP model didn't catch on, but the TCP/IP protocol did. Doc says the TCP/IP model is still brought up heavily in the new Core 1 of A+. No, it's not. It's not in there at all. The TCP/IP model is not mentioned at all, and nor should it be. We never use it. What's the point of talking about something? Why don't we also talk about asynchronous transfer mode and FDDI? There'd be no point to that. It's even worse than that because we never really used the TCP/IP model. It never was used. We never took advantage. We talk in terms of OSI. So you will always hear people, when you talk to them about networking problems, you're always going to use the layers associated with the OSI layer. So yes, TCP is used. IP is used. Those protocols are perhaps the almost practically exclusive on the internet. Those are absolutely still used. The model, however, not used at all. The 4, in some cases, 5-layer TCP/IP model, not used at all. Isn't that weird how we kind of switched the model with the protocol and how it worked out? It's just the way those things go. Let's see how you did with this one. I have a number of answers that have been put in. Let's step through each one of these and see if we can put in the answers for this OSI models. And Doc's reminding me, no, it's in lesson 5, topic 5B of the core 1 book. Use basic TCP/IP concepts. Except it's not in the exam objectives, is it? And using TCP/IP concepts is not the same thing as the TCP/IP model. Those are how that works out. So hopefully that's one of those situations. Let's see how you did with this question. Let's start at the very first one. The default gateway of a device is 192.168.1.1. So what OSI model would be, what layer of the OSI model is associated with that? Now, since we're talking about IP addresses, which clearly 192.168.1.1 is an IP address, and we're talking about a default gateway, we will put that one very solidly in the OSI layer 3. All traffic matching TCP 443 is allowed through a firewall. Well, we don't know exactly when we see the word firewall what type of firewall it happens to be. Is it a traditional port-based firewall? Is it a next-generation firewall? Well, in this example, it doesn't matter, because the real important part was before that, where we mentioned TCP 443. So if we're doing anything that deals with TCP, UDP, or a specific port number, then we are, of course, talking about OSI layer 4, transporting data. The broadcast address of a subnet is FF. That's a pretty common broadcast address. But what type of broadcast address? All of those enlisting those 6 different bytes that are there should automatically make you think about MAC addresses. And of course, that's exactly what is working there at that level. Technically, there is no device with that MAC address because this is a broadcast address. This is sent and received by everybody on the network. And all Fs for a broadcast address dealing with MAC addresses, that is OSI layer 2, or the data link control layer. The next on our list is a bad cable has increased the number of CRC errors. Bad cables can do that. So this is why we need to swap those cables out. First thing, if we get CRC errors, which of course you should know from the troubleshooting section of your exam, a bad cable has increased the number of CRC errors. If that's a problem, then the issue is getting the signal properly through that particular cable. If we're having a signaling problem, then we're dealing with the physical layer of the OSI model, or layer 1. And then lastly, a login has failed due to an invalid password. Well, this is working at the user input into an application. You're putting in a password, you're hitting in that particular value. No, it's not layer 10. It's layer, maybe I gave a little bit too much away there. Layer 7, the application layer. A login has failed due to an invalid password. So those are the 5 descriptions in OSI layers. The default gateway of a device being 192.168.1.1 is indeed layer 3. All traffic matching TCP 443 is allowed through a firewall, that is layer 4. We've got the broadcast address of a subnet is all Fs, that is layer 2. A bad cable has increased the number of CRC errors, that's layer 1. And lastly, a login has failed due to an invalid password, that indeed is layer 7. That is exactly what we would be working with on all of these. That is pretty straightforward. Some folks are talking about it sounds like talking about the session layer at layer 5. I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but no, there's no session layer here. And the real key is the numbers that you see here. If you see an IP address, it's layer 3. If you see a port number, it's layer 4. If you see a MAC address, it's layer 2. Those are sort of locked in stone. So if you see those particular statistics, those metrics, those variables, those are absolutely. Login failed due to an invalid password. That's absolutely an application layer. You're seeing something on your screen, you're typing it in, you're hitting enter. Obviously, there probably is a session that is occurring behind the scenes. There's probably even encryption and other things that may be occurring at layer 6. But of course, we're talking about the highest layer when we talk about OSI model. And layer 7 is the one where we are seeing information pop up and see that exactly what's on our screen. Anytime you're looking at something on the screen, anytime there's a message on the screen, anytime we're talking about things that we see on the screen, that's an application layer. That's layer 7 every time. So that should give you some clues when you're talking about OSI as to where you would fit those particular pieces of information into all of the layers of the OSI model. Hopefully those will work. That is your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that's given you some ideas and some thoughts around OSI. Let's now shift gears back to a multiple choice-based question. I've got one for you. This question, since we were talking about firewalls, here we go. Firewalls. A security team is enabling IPS rules on their NGFW to help protect against directed attacks. Which of the following would describe this strategy? Would that be least privilege, role-based access control, defense in depth, penetration testing, or zero trust? A security team is enabling IPS rules on their NGFW to help protect against directed attacks. Which of the following would describe this strategy? Is it least privilege, role-based access control, defense in depth, penetration testing, or zero trust? If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link that's right there on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. See how that works. That is one. I love doing the OSI model questions. It takes me back to my early years of working with networks. And what's interesting is that the model we used at the very beginnings of networking is still the same model we use today. When we're talking to other IT professionals or networking professionals, and you say, I think it's a layer 3 issue, let's have a look at the routing tables. Let's have a look at our IP addresses and subnet masks. Or you might think the problem is more related to a port number or something, maybe filtering a port number, where now we're at layer 4. And you can talk to somebody and say, well, I've run some tests. We've done port scans. We think there's an issue at layer 4. Let's check the firewall. So those things are a pretty common nomenclature. It's a pretty common way to communicate back and forth with other networking professionals. What's nice about that is they know exactly what you mean. When you say you think it's a layer 7 issue, or it's a layer 4 issue, or it's a layer 3 issue, they know exactly what you're talking about. And it brings everybody right into a single point where they can all discuss whether it is or is not related to that particular problem. Now, of course, you could certainly take it to the next level and talk more specific about any one of those topics. Let's just talk about IP addresses. Let's talk about port numbers. Why are we talking in layers? Why don't we just say what it is? Well, that's just humans. That's just how we work. It's a little easier to talk broadly when you're not sure exactly where the problem is coming from. So it's another one of those that that might help you as you get into doing this more and more in the practical sense. And of course, if you show up in your interview and you talk about OSI layer 10, then you should probably look for another interview to go to. There is no OSI layer 10. It's only 1 through 7. So hopefully that will help you in your studies. If you've never seen OSI before, then that last question was ridiculous. It was, you couldn't follow it. What does that mean? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That makes no sense at all. So make sure you go back and look through that OSI video that's in my course. It will tell you everything you need to know for this exam when it comes to OSI, and does it very, very quickly. So that is exactly, the answer is the friends are made along the way. That's correct. That's exactly what the answer is. Let's see how you did with the answers. The question again was, a security team is enabling IPS rules on their NGFW to help protect against directed attacks. Which of the following would describe this strategy? Is it least privilege, role-based access control, defense in depth, penetration testing, or zero trust? All real things, all come directly from the exam objectives. But what is the right answer? Let's see how you answered. We can see that 52% of you, just over half, have said defense in depth is what you would have chosen. 21% say role-based access control. 12% say zero trust. 8% say penetration testing. And 7% say least privilege. Well, in this case, we've got an NGFW, that's a next generation firewall, a firewall that is application aware. It knows if you're using Twitter. It knows if you're using SQL Server. It knows if you're using a VPN type. It can recognize, identify those, and then the administrator of the firewall can allow or disallow that type of traffic regardless of the port number that might be used. What's nice about these next generation firewalls is they do more than just firewalling. They, of course, have built-in IPS, content filtering, antivirus, anti-malware, and a host of other things that they can do. In this case, we're enabling the IPS features, IPS being the intrusion prevention system. That is, in many cases, a signature-based detection system that is able to identify known vulnerabilities as they are traversing the network. So if we know that, and we've already got a firewall, we're already protecting at the application level and indeed with port numbers, because next generation firewalls just do everything. And we're adding on more capabilities. We're turning on more functions in this firewall to stop even more things from occurring, specifically the intrusion prevention system to prevent things from occurring. That means that we're adding sort of a layered effect of what's there. All of the different layers that you could bring in to really consider what the different options might be to protect your network. And when you layer things that way and you have multiple types of security systems that are protecting multiple types of data, then you're dealing with defense in depth. This is where you would have perhaps you need a firewall. You should have antivirus on your workstations. You might want to be sure that you're using a screen subnet, that you're doing authentication and VPNs. You have badge access. So you're layering on a lot of different security technologies to make sure that you're protecting the network and, in some cases, the physical facility from someone gaining access to your data. This is a common way to protect your systems. It's sort of the idea behind not any single device is going to protect everything that you need it to protect. And you probably wouldn't want that anyway. So yes, you do need a next generation firewall. You do need to turn on the IPS functionality. You also need to have antivirus and anti-malware running on your workstations. I mentioned earlier that next generation firewalls also have the ability to look for malware and spyware and viruses, but they are limited as to the number that they're able to detect. So we, of course, not only need to turn that on the firewall, we also need to make sure we have antivirus and anti-malware running on our workstations. We would never want that to happen. We would never want those things to be on our system. So make sure you are familiar with the idea of defense in depth and how you might layer these technologies together to make your systems so much more secure. So is a next generation firewall always considered defense in depth? Well, I guess it could be if you are turning on all of those additional features. Maybe you got a next generation firewall, you are filtering based on applications, then you turn on the IPS functionality, then you turn on the antivirus, anti-malware functionality, then you turn on content filtering, so that it protects you from going to any known malicious URLs. So there you've already turned on 3 or 4 different layers of protection. That absolutely is defense in depth. So, of course, that's not where you should end. There's, of course, many other security technologies you should have on your network. And each time you add a new one, you're adding more layers and adding to the defense in depth. That is the right answer. And if you answered C, 53% of you chose defense in depth. That is the correct answer. 20% said it's a role-based access control. In this case, we weren't doing any access control. There was no checking of users. There was no authentication process. We weren't trying to allow or disallow people access to a particular area of the network or a particular object. So it would not be qualified as a role-based access control. 12% of you said zero trust. There was no mention of trust in the question. Zero trust, of course, is the philosophy or concept behind trusting no one, which is really in security a very good position to have, where you can trust nothing on the network, no one on the network, and every time you go out and connect to another device or need to use a service that's on the network, you have to be able to at least prove that you are who you say you are, or whatever method you have to authenticate those people. Zero trust is a very popular and growing in popularity philosophy behind security on today's networks. What other options did we have? 8% of us said penetration testing. There's no pen testing going on here. We weren't trying to take advantage of a known vulnerability. We weren't trying to hack into a system, so this would not be penetration testing. And then you've got least privilege, which is certainly an important concept in security that dictates that you will only allow someone to have just the right amount of access to be able to do their job. For example, you would not give administrator access to everybody on your network, right? Right? Of course you would not. Unfortunately, in many organizations, especially small companies, they tend to do that sometimes. Very bad idea, exceptionally poor security, and you would never want to do that. You would instead want to implement least privilege, where users only have just the right amount of rights and permissions to be able to do the normal things that they need to do for their job. So those are the different options, and that is why, in this case, defense in depth, 54% of you got that one absolutely right. Now, in the chat room, some folks were saying, is IPS signature-based? I think the vast majority of IPSs are signature-based. That's a good way to approach this. I'm speaking, of course, as someone who was a systems engineer for a next-generation firewall company. I'm extremely familiar with the IPS technologies that have been embedded within other next-generation firewalls, and they are almost always, in that scenario, signature-based. Now, if you were to use a standalone IPS, very few people do that these days, but there may be cases where it makes sense for you. There are other IPS technologies that you would be able to use to find other vulnerabilities that may not be part of a signature. So it just depends on the IPS you're using, but I would say for most next-generation firewalls, they are practically going to be exclusively signature-based IPS. So hopefully you're familiar with defense in depth. If you weren't already, you certainly are now. And 53% of you got that one right with answer C. Let's do another question. This is a very straightforward question. You may be able to get this one right without even seeing the possible answers. The question asks, which of the following would be the best choice to connect to a management interface? Would that be a rollover cable, a plenum-rated cable, a loopback cable, multi-mode fiber, or 802.11ax? Which of the following would be the best choice to connect to a management interface? Is it rollover cable, plenum-rated cable, loopback cable, multi-mode fiber, or 802.11ax? If you think you know the answer, follow the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll figure out if we know the answer to this one. Those of you that have plugged into a management interface before, you may already be familiar with this. I want to thank Kevin in the chat room with the $10 super chat. Kevin says, I passed my Network Plus Monday. Huge thanks for the great content / study material, Professor. Well, congratulations on your Network Plus, first and foremost. And thank you for the super chat as well. I always love to hear the success stories. I also like to hear when things don't go well. There have been a number of people that tried taking their exams online at home and have run into problems and have come to me and said, I ran into a problem. And I always mention that if something goes wrong when you're taking your exam online, always reach out to Pearson VUE. Always see if they can reimburse or restate your voucher to be able to use that again. They'll look at the video, and they do capture every video so they can review it later. So they'll look at the video. They'll see if maybe the proctor was correct or maybe not correct in what they chose. It should be pretty good. Jacob said, I passed Network Plus last month from Airbnb in Ecuador. That is interesting in that you were in, did you plan to go to another country to do this? Were you working in another country? Here's the interesting part. Was your permanent address in the U.S. and did you use a U.S. voucher even though you were in Ecuador? We'll find out. We'll see what that actually is. It should be an interesting story. We want to know more. Kevin, thank you also for that $10 super chat. I know I thank so much. So Jacob lived there 2 years, have lived there 2 years, I guess, had to buy an Ecuador voucher. So that makes sense. Yeah, if you're there and your address is for that country, then you must use a voucher for that country. They don't let you mix and match those things together. Let's see how you did with this question. The question is, which of the following would be the best choice to connect to a management interface? Is that a rollover cable, a plenum rated cable, a loopback cable, a multi-mode fiber, or 802.11ax? What could the answer be? Let's see what you think. 56% of you, again, we're getting just over half on these answers, which is, by the way, what I'm shooting for. So I'm pretty happy about that. Rollover cable, 56%. So more than half of you think rollover cable is what you would use on a management interface. Interesting. We have 18% that said multi-mode fiber would be the appropriate choice. 10% said 802.11ax. We have 9% that said loopback cable and 6% that said plenum rated cable. Interestingly enough, you could have a plenum rated cable wired as a rollover cable. You could have plenum rated cable wired as a loopback cable. I'm making this more complicated than it needs to be. What would the right answer be, though? If you say it's rollover cable to connect to a management interface, then you are probably using some type of Cisco device, because they loved the rollover cables at one time. This is a standard that thankfully was here for a moment and then eventually died away. I think most everything these days knows that it is probably a more of a serial or null modem or USB type cable that you would use for management these days. But certainly if you get into a place where you are working through cables and old Cisco, I say old Cisco equipment, but it's one of those cases where when you install a switch, we tend to leave the switch in the rack until it stops working or until there's some massive need to upgrade. There might be a requirement to upgrade at some point, but it's not unusual to walk into some of these data centers and still see a 10100 switch still running in the rack because it's not a bandwidth urgent or requirement type application. It's a switch that has been bought and paid for. It runs just fine. So why would you want to swap it out? The problem, of course, comes that now we need to connect to this switch over a management interface to perform some type of upgrade or gain access to the switch, and we would need the appropriate cable to do that. You may find that some of your switches out there are rollover cables for using this connection. It's normally has an RJ45 connector on both ends. You plug it in and you're able to do that. But that's one of the common things you'll run into. Mostly these days, you're going to find traditional null modem, which is a different wiring scheme than what you see here. It's more of that serial connection. There's a different set of pinouts for that one. Almost everything is null modem. And of course, if you've got any newer switch, newer router, newer infrastructure device, you'll notice that the latest management interfaces tend to be direct USB. Just plug in a USB connection, and that way you don't have to have any type of adapter or 9-pin connection or extra cable, which is great for when you have to carry around a lot of stuff in your bag, and I know how that is for sure. Rollover cable was the answer here because there really was no other option here. A DB9 serial cable wasn't listed here. A USB serial cable, that's sort of redundant, isn't it? USB serial. But that wasn't listed in this group. So the only choice, or in this case, the best choice to choose from, the only one available is indeed a rollover cable. 18% of you said multi-mode fiber. Fiber is almost never, I don't think I've ever seen fiber used for a management interface. Management interfaces are interfaces on the front of a switch or router, sometimes in the back of the switch, router, firewall, or infrastructure device that are available for you to be able to administratively connect to that device and be able to manage it. Imagine if you set up a switch, but now you forgot the IP address of the switch and you can't connect to it over the network, then you're going to want to plug in directly to that switch to configure it. And the way that you would do that is through that management interface that is right on the front. So because we're standing in front of the device, you generally don't use fiber to connect to that. It's almost always, well, I've never seen fiber, so it's always going to be a copper connection. So we would not choose multi-mode fiber in this particular example. Other examples, 10% of you said 802.11ax, one of our latest wireless standards, which is a very fast way to transmit data over a wireless network, but we're plugging into a management interface, which is a copper interface on an infrastructure device. We aren't going to be using wireless for that. So 802.11ax would not be a technology that we would use. 9% of you said loopback cable. A loopback cable is when you would plug into an interface, you send data out of that interface, it loops the data back into the receive on the same interface, and then you examine it to see if what you received equals or is the same as what you sent. If it isn't, then there's some kind of problem going on, and that loopback cable may have just identified a problem with that physical interface. Loopback cables are not used to plug into management. Loopback cables you can't plug in. It's literally sends data out and back in again. There's no way for you to get into that connection, so that would not be the correct option either. We also, guys, our final option, our final answer on here, a plenum rated cable. The plenum, of course, is that area above the drop ceiling where there is a plenum. Usually there's wiring up there, there's pipes, and there's usually ductwork. If the ductwork is open and there's air that's flowing into that plenum area, either on the send or receive side, if the cool air is coming out of the plenum or you're sending air back into the plenum, then you're going to want to make sure you use a special plenum rated cable just in case there's a fire. Plenum rated cables are designed to be low smoke. They're designed to not put out a lot of noxious fumes. They're also sort of an anti-fire or fire prevention type technology in the sheath itself. So it's perfect for a case where there might be an emergency dealing with fire, and you don't want your network cabling to somehow contribute to fumes in the air, or to have your network cables be the way that the fire gets from one part of the building to another. And for that reason, you'll probably be required to use a special type of cable called a plenum rated cable for that. But plenum rated cables are not what you would use to connect to a management interface. They're usually more expensive because they are fire rated or fire prevention type technologies. And plenum rated cables are sort of stiff to use. So it's one where you would not be able to easily transport that cable around. You would want something a little more easy to pack into your bag. So you really wouldn't want to use a plenum rated cable, even though technically you could use, if all you had, you were looking around, I need a cable, I need to put some RJ45s on the end of the cable and use just as a network connection. You can find one laying around, you can do that, but not something you would commonly associate with connecting to a management interface. The best choice in this list is indeed choice A, your rollover cable, and 57% of you said, yep, that's the answer we would have chose as well. You got that one absolutely correct. So in the chat room, some people are already mentioning that there's these technologies, the things that you're seeing on the screen with rollover cables and plenum rated cables and loopback cables and management interfaces and DB9 and rollover. These were all things that we've seen on the exam objectives, and you'd be absolutely right. Those sets of exam objectives tell you everything you need to know to pass this exam. In fact, all of my videos were written specifically to those set of exam objectives. What I've done is take everything from all of my videos for Network Plus, and would you believe there's 93 Network Plus videos in this library? There's a lot of videos. It's over 14 hours of content. As much as I would love for everyone to watch all 14 hours, and you really should, not everyone has the time to do that. So what I've done is take everything that's in that particular set of videos, and I've collapsed them down into one single book. This is my set of course notes. It's available in a digital form and a physical form. This is obviously the physical version. So if you're looking for something, all of the important text, all of the important charts, all of the important graphics from my videos are in here. I'm going to give you a better view of this. I've got it up on my terminal, my screen right here. Let's make it full screen so you can really see it. And let's put it in a view of that way. There it is. There's the course notes. It's PDF format. And you can buy the digital format or the physical format. And you can see everything from my videos. It's in here. All of the text, all those important graphics, all of the information on how pinouts are, all of the port numbers, all of the command lines, everything you need to know for your Network Plus exam. This, of course, doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace the videos. There is no easy button for these certifications, but it is something that can really help you once you've watched the videos, once you've read the book, and you want something to really be able to go through and have a quick reference that you can even have it in digital form and carry it everywhere you go. That's my course notes. If you get the physical version, you also get the digital version along with that for free. If you want to know more about that, go to my website. You can find that from the pull-down links, or you can go to professormesser.com/NPCN for Network Plus course notes. That might give you the information that you might be looking for to really get you over the hump with your studies. And I find that it's a great reference source as well. We've already had some people mention in our super chats how much it helped them when they were studying for their exams as well. Maybe it will help you on your studies at professormesser.com/NPCN. Let's do some more questions. We've got some time. Let's step through another one. This next question on our list, since we just talked about fiber, didn't we? So let's talk about even more fiber. This question asks, which of the following would best describe a network connection? Well, never mind. I just gave it to you. Which of the following, you didn't see that, did you? For those of you on the podcast, we're going to play along with the podcast, folks. Which of the following would best describe a network connection using multiple frequencies in the same fiber? I wonder what it could be. Could it be WDM, FCOE, CSMACD, EIGRP, or SNMP? I wonder what you'll choose when you plug it in there. That's the beauty of a live stream, everybody. For those of you listening on the podcast side, I gave away the answer before they happened to see it. Oh, some folks in the chat room, you missed it. It was right there. I bet you'll get it right because I'm showing the answers as people are putting them up, which I normally never do. I know I should change the question, but we're going to talk about this question even though I gave it away. We're just not going to sit through the whole thing of waiting for you to vote on it because I think it's got some good information in here. Which of the following would best describe a network connection using multiple frequencies in the same fiber? Would that be WDM, FCOE, CSMACD, EIGRP, or SNMP? So whenever I do these, you'll notice there is a sort of a fixture in these questions where I use a lot of abbreviations. That's because CompTIA loves to do this on the exam. And probably more than A+ or Security Plus, Network Plus probably has more 3-letter and 4-letter and 5-letter acronyms than really anything else. If you're looking for an abbreviation, we've got it in networking. We probably have more than enough networking abbreviations to go through this. So let's step through each one of these to understand what they are and why or why not these would have been the right answer. There's some bad grammar there, but we're going to go with it. Which of the following would best describe a network connection using multiple frequencies in the same fiber? So let's start at the bottom. 4% said SNMP. That's the Simple Network Management Protocol. You will certainly use SNMP if you're working in networking because that is the protocol you would use to query an infrastructure device, such as a server, a router, a switch, or something else, to query it to see how it's performing. So you would ask how many bytes have gone through a particular interface, and it will give you an answer of how many bytes have gone through that interface. Very useful protocol. You should absolutely be familiar with it, but it does not have anything to do with multiple frequencies being used in the same fiber. We've got EIGRP. That is a dynamic routing protocol primarily associated with Cisco devices. It is not particularly proprietary to Cisco, but anytime you see EIGRP, it's a Cisco device. It's probably a Cisco device. That's just sort of the commonality of EIGRP. If somebody is using EIGRP and they're not using a Cisco device, you probably should ask some questions about why they're doing that, or if they even realize that this is probably not something that makes a lot of sense for what they're doing. Or maybe it does. Maybe they have a good reason for using EIGRP, but that is a routing protocol, and routing protocols do not have anything to do with multiple frequencies inside of a fiber. We've got other options in here, like 7% said CSMACD. That is the carrier sense multiple access, the idea behind connecting to a network with Ethernet and being able to send data. And then when we send that data, we need some way to determine if a collision has occurred. This obviously doesn't apply to full duplex, so we put the CD on the end for collision detect. So that's why, if you ever work through these, that it's very useful to understand these acronyms, but more importantly, know what the acronyms mean, because you will get these asked of you in context, very similar to what this question did. FCOE, another way that you could approach some of these things whenever you work through fiber channel over Ethernet, for example, that's a storage area network type protocol. Storage area network is not what we were talking about here. We were talking about multiple frequencies in the same fiber. So finally, up here at the top is the right answer. It's WDM. Some of you saw the WDM pop up there for a moment. We're, of course, talking about wavelength division multiplexing. Multiplexing being a very well-known and well-used technology in networking. Well, we're taking the idea of this multiplexing and using it on fiber networks to be able to send multiple threads, or multiple threads is the wrong term, multiple channels of conversation across the same strand of fiber. This is remarkable. In fact, how would you do that? Well, you would simply do that by using different frequencies, sending all of those frequencies of light down that same fiber. And then on the other side, there's something that is undividing the frequency, dividing up the frequencies that's being received. You can think of it as sending different colors down that particular fiber. I think that's a good way to think about it. So you would send a red and a green and a blue, send that down the fiber. That's 3 different network connections. And on the other side, we simply separate out the colors, and now we have the original network streams ready to go. You may see this represented as CWDM, which is a coarse wavelength division multiplexing. There's also a dense wavelength division multiplexing, DWDM, where we can really put 160 signals to increase that total capacity up to 1.6 terabits per second over a single fiber. If you want to know what that looks like, it's in the video 1.3 Ethernet standards, where here we have those 3 sources, red, green, and blue, putting them into a multiplexer, sending it across a single fiber, and on the other side, we're separating them back out again, which is exactly what you would expect from a multiplexer. So if you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you are here to earn 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. If you would like to receive that email from me, you need to follow these instructions. Go to the top or bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, put your email address. In the subject line, put August 2022 Network Plus Study Group. And on the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month. What should we use? Let's choose FCOE, Fiber Channel over Ethernet. FCOE is what we would choose as our super secret code word of the month. And then you can, of course, put anything else in that message you would like. I read through every single one of those. In fact, I like getting the messages from you that you send. I get a lot of these every month, so I'm not able to respond back to all of them, but I do read through every single one that you send me. So again, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. The subject line puts something that tells me where this came from, August 2022 Network Plus Study Group. And then on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, FCOE, Fiber Channel over Ethernet. Okay, so we sort of messed up the answer on that one. So let's do one where you don't see what the answer is. Let me make sure I queue it up. Here we go. And here is a question that we're able to go through. The question asks, which of the following can be used to prevent unauthorized access to a wired Ethernet switch interface? Would that be spanning tree protocol, jumbo frames, route poisoning, port security, or VPN? Which of the following can be used to prevent unauthorized access to a wired Ethernet switch interface? Would that be spanning tree protocol, jumbo frames, route poisoning, port security, or VPN? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. See if you happen to know what you would use to prevent unauthorized access to a wired Ethernet switch interface. It's got to be one of those. These technologies that we put into the answers are all real things that come from your exam objectives. So make sure that if you read through this list and you say, jumbo frames, I don't know what jumbo frames are. Route poisoning, I don't know what route poisoning is, or any one of these, make sure you make a note and you go back to your exam objectives to really understand what that technology is. Because even though this question has an answer, the things that are not the correct answer may still appear on your actual exam. So the more you know about all of these answers, the better off you are going to be. So that's where this comes from. So hopefully you're familiar with some of these technologies. This does become a bit of a challenge if you're somebody who's working through understanding the way all of these work. All of these have some type of allowing or disallowing of traffic in some degree. So we'll have to see. what those different options might be. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what it is. I think if you are ever in the case or in a situation where you're in the exam and you get a question like this, this may be one of those where you just get rid of the things you know it isn't. We do some calculatus illimitatus and just get rid of some of those that you know, well, it couldn't be that one. It couldn't be that one. So we'll have to do this one. That's the real challenge. See how we do. And really understanding more about what the different options might be. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, which of the following can be used to prevent unauthorized access to a wired Ethernet switch interface? Is it spanning tree protocol, jumbo frames, route poisoning, port security, VPN? Let's share the results and see what you think the answer is. 88% of you, that is a pretty strong answer, say it is indeed port security is what you would choose. We've got 6% said spanning tree protocol, 5% said VPN, 1% said jumbo frames, and 1% said route poisoning. Or is it route poisoning? We'll have to find out. I guess it depends on where you are. Indeed, port security is what we were looking for, with 87% of you answering. There's really no question here. That was the answer. Port security, it's kind of a generic term, although I've seen port security used as the term that is on a switch, primarily switches where you would see this implemented. And this does allow you to limit who's able to plug into a switch and use a particular interface. You can imagine if a device is on someone's desk and they've got a desktop computer, it's plugged into a network port. The thing you don't want to have happen is to have somebody come by with a laptop, unplug their machine, plug their laptop into that network connection, and now they're on the network. And now they have access to everything that machine would have been able to access. They would obviously need credentials to be able to authenticate, but now they can start their process of mapping the network, identifying particular resources on the network, seeing if they can find access into those resources. They can start doing the hacking. And what you want to avoid is avoid any of them from gaining access to anything that's out there on the network. So it does this and identifies this particular workstations based on the MAC address. So when that person working at their desk with their desktop computer was on this interface, the switch recognized, oh, that's the MAC address of that particular machine. So when somebody unplugged that particular interface and plugged in their laptop, it was a different MAC address. And when that happened, now we have to find some way to be able to block it. And since it's now a different MAC address, we're going to stop that particular device from communicating through that switch interface. So normally you would configure a maximum number of addresses on the interface, monitor those addresses to see what's happening. And if it happens to change or increase by one because somebody plugged in their laptop, we can choose the option to prevent or disable that particular interface. So this is a pretty useful function. If you're in a situation where you want to be sure that only authorized devices are on the network, yet another layer to put into your layered security for defense in depth. See how we stuck all those things together? That worked out pretty well, right? It's exactly what you would want to use. Port security was the right answer. 88% of you got that one absolutely right. 6% of you chose spanning tree protocol. Spanning tree doesn't have anything to do with preventing unauthorized access. Spanning tree protocol, of course, was designed to prevent loops on a switch network, which obviously is very important, but has nothing to do with authentication or allowing people access to the network. We've got 5% of you that said VPN, a virtual private network, is not really used to prevent unauthorized access to a wired Ethernet switch interface. That's not what a VPN does. A VPN is an encrypted tunnel that allows us to connect to a VPN concentrator and send information from one network to another over that secure tunnel. But it really doesn't provide the ability to limit or prevent unauthorized access to a specific wired Ethernet switch interface. Definitely not the best answer to choose in this particular case. We got 1% that said jumbo frames. Jumbo frames normally is jumbo frames are large frames. That's really, they're jumbo. They're big frames. Normally an Ethernet frame has a maximum MTU maximum transmission unit. That's redundant, isn't it? A maximum MTU. Transmission unit up 1,500 bytes. What we want to do is increase that so that, especially if you're transferring very large or lots of data, that you could put larger frames on the network, and Jumbo Frames allows you to do that as long as all of the devices on your network know what to do with Jumbo Frames. I have a bit of a challenge. I can tell you a Jumbo Frame story if you want to hear that one later. It's hilarious. You'll love it. Route poisoning, last one on here. Route poisoning used to have a particular route suddenly get removed from a routing table or to prevent someone from accessing a particular route. Route poisoning is great to allow or disallow a particular route on that network, but it's not used to prevent unauthorized access to a wired Ethernet switch interface. The best answer here, really the only one that makes sense, is indeed port security. 88% of you got that one right. I want to thank Too Chill in the chat room, who is not only Too Chill, but is also someone who took and passed their Network Plus exam since the last study group. Congratulations. Wanted to thank you, and now got my eyes on passing Security Plus. So now it's time to really get some studying going. You thought Network Plus was something. Ooh, wait till you get to the Security Plus side. Not a simple exam, that's Security Plus, and it's a big one for this. So hopefully that can help you. And congratulations on the Network Plus. Best of luck with Security Plus. Thank you also for the $5 super chat, Mr. or Mrs. Chill. We appreciate that. Now, I know we're 5 minutes over time, but let's do one more question. What do you think? We got another one in here. So let's see how you do. This might be another gimme for those of you that have worked with this technology before, but I don't care. We're going with it. This question asks, which of the following would provide the best metrics of VoIP call quality? Would it be duplex, jitter, temperature, link status, or speed? Which of the following would provide the best metrics of VoIP call quality? Would it be duplex, jitter, temperature, link status, or speed? If you think you know the answer, I should probably put up the link for you. There it is, professormesser.com/QA. Go to that link, see what you think the answer might be, lock in your answer, and then we're going to see what we think it is. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to find the best metrics of VoIP call quality. Let's see how you do with this one. Lock in that answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Chat room, Damien's asking, does Network Plus help in any way in passing Security Plus? Well, it does help in a way, in some way, I guess a little bit of taking Security Plus, because there is a little bit of networking on the Security Plus exam. Some people feel that the Security Plus exam has a lot of overlap with Network Plus, but if you look at the objectives, there's probably about 10% overlap. It's not a huge amount. Still 10%, that's 10% you don't have to study, or you already recognize the technology, so it's easier to study. The topics that are on those two exams are obviously from a different perspective. That if you are taking this exam for Network Plus and you're talking about routers and switches, you're really talking about it at a networking level. But if you're looking at Security Plus and you're talking about routers and switches, you're approaching it from a security perspective. So it really depends on how you do with the studying. It's not an exact one-to-one, but I think 10% is a pretty good number. I think not a pretty good number. I calculated it. I went through the objectives and found the ones that matched, counted how many that was, and it was about 10%. So whether that's a good number or not, I don't know. We'll have to find out whether that really makes sense. But I think that gives you at least some perspective. It's not a lot. I've heard some people say it's half the exam is Network Plus. No, it's not even close. Not even close. And you should never go into Security Plus thinking that most of it is networking, because it definitely is not. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asked, which of the following would provide the best metrics of VoIP call quality? Is it duplex, jitter, temperature, link status, or speed? And if we look at the results, did not get half. We got pretty much half. I'm going to call it half. 48% say it's jitter is what they would choose. 20% said speed is the important metric. 16% said link status. 15% said duplex, and only 1% said temperature. I would bet if it's really, really cold, wouldn't your teeth be chattering and the call quality be bad because they wouldn't be able to really hear you or understand you because your teeth are chattering? Probably not what we were looking for. We were looking for something that was a little more quantitative. And in that case, we were really interested in jitter. Jitter is a value. Well, that's very good. It was chitter. The jitter. Jitter. The real-time media. Whenever you're working with real-time media like real-time audio, real-time video, a Zoom call, a voice call, those types of communication, you need to see what people are saying. You need to see them and hear what they're saying right after they do it. You really can't have delays. There's no way to retransmit that data if you don't receive it. It's too late at that point. We're already continuing on with the conversation. So if you're ever in the case where you're trying to determine what is the quality of getting data across the network in a very regular interval, that value is called jitter. And what you're looking for are very small jitter values. You would like the jitter to not have wide differences when the frames come through. You want these always to come through at regular intervals. Let me give you an idea of this timing between frames and when it's good and when it might have a choppy voice call. So there's a line we draw. This is a line over time, so we can really see what's there. And over time, we have traffic that's coming over our network. So we would like to see these packets coming through the network, one after the other, with really not much differences between the frames. There's not much of a gap. And they're all coming in at pretty much the same interval. Some are a little closer together than others, but they're still coming in at a very common rate, a very regular interval as this information is going through. But what if there's other traffic on the network? What if there is a problem with the switch being overloaded? What if somebody starts a very big file transfer that takes up resources on the network? What we might find is some of this data is coming through with much larger gaps between those particular packets. So the jitter values will now increase. We have a larger jitter. We have more jitter between these different frames that are coming through. So if we look at the frames and we're listening to the phone call or we're participating on this call, you might get some of the frames drop out. It might get choppy. They might sound like they're underwater. There's a lot of different ways that the codec can handle the audio communication going through those links. But this is not what you want. You want what's on the top. You don't want the communication on the bottom. Certainly not with a real-time video or audio stream. That is definitely something that should be very regular intervals. Now, what if you're downloading a file? Well, then either one of these works. That's not an issue. And that's not a real-time streaming issue. So these jitter values are really most important when you're dealing with video, audio, or anything that is real-time. Very important to be able to know that. So jitter is indeed the correct answer. 48% of you got that one right. 20% of you said speed. And although speed is always important on a network, we always talk about utilization as being one of our primary metrics that we would want to know about. But those metrics really, really help you understand how things are performing. Voice communication, even video communication these days, does not use a lot of bandwidth relative to how much we generally tend to have available these days. So the best metrics of VoIP call quality, given all the other answers, speed is probably not the best one I would choose. Link status, 17% of you said link status. Well, that's certainly something that might tell you the quality of a phone call, but this is either one where the network is connected or the network is not connected. That's really a one or the other scenario. And if you get into that situation, that's not going to have any bearing on the phone call. You're not going to have metrics about call quality because if you're not connected, there will be no phone call. So probably not a good metric to choose for that one either. We've got duplex. Duplex is certainly important to understand how the networking configuration or the network link, the Ethernet link, is set up between devices, whether it's full duplex or half duplex. These days on switch networks, everybody's running full duplex. What you're really looking for is if anything is set to half. If you ever see anything set to half duplex on a network, you should already be thinking, that's a little weird. We probably are going to have problems with throughput on that connection, but it probably would not have a huge effect on voice over IP, and certainly not the best metric to choose when you're trying to determine if the call quality is good or not. You wouldn't be looking at duplex for that, just as you wouldn't be looking at temperature either. Temperature is a very important metric, especially in a data center. You always want to be monitoring the temperature. You always want to know the humidity in the data center, and you always want to watch those constantly. You want to be alarmed if any of those go in or out of a particular range. But for call quality, temperature is not our concern. We really wanted to know about jitter. So the question other folks have asked is, how do I know how to measure jitter? Some phones and voice over IP devices and video conferencing systems will measure it for you, or at least in a diagnostics area of that particular software or hardware will show you those jitter values. So you wouldn't even need additional hardware or software to be able to do that. It's just built into the voice over IP system or the video conferencing system that you're using. But if you wanted to have a third-party device tell you what the jitter value is, you can capture those packets. Practically any protocol analyzer will be able to calculate jitter and give you information on the jitter values. What's also interesting is the two endpoints that are communicating back and forth are also constantly keeping track of quality, and they will occasionally send information back and forth to each other saying, here's the call quality I'm getting on this side. What are you getting on that side? Oh, well, here's the call quality I'm getting on this side. And in the case of certain technologies, they will adjust their parameters depending on what the other side is telling them to get the best possible phone call or video conference out of that communication. So in this case, though, to get the best metrics of VoIP call quality, the best answer here, the one that really is the best metrics, is indeed jitter. Answer B, that's what we were looking for. If you answered B, jitter, you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. All of the questions that we went through today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. This is an important document. If you don't have your hands on these objectives, you are indeed doing yourself a disservice. There is plenty of valuable information in these objectives. They provide you with a lot of great detail and tell you effectively everything you need to know to pass these exams. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and you'll see a link to take you over to the CompTIA website to download these, or you can simply go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, download those objectives. They are a valuable tool. They are a fantastic checklist. You should go through this list before booking your exam to really see if you really know everything you need to know. And it's free. Go to professormesser.com/objectives to be able to get your hands on those. We do one of these Network Plus study groups every month, along with 2 A+ study groups and a Security Plus study group. We're doing more in September. Here are the September dates. Notice it's a little chaotic in September. We've got an A+ on the 6th, an A+ on the 12th. Really, it's Core 1 and Core 2. Network Plus on the 28th, and then back-to-back Security Plus on the 29th. What was I thinking? Well, there's everywhere that we're not listed here is just chaos. There's just craziness going on behind the scenes. So that's why it's such a weird calendar in September. If you ever want to know when the next live event is going to be, please go to professormesser.com/calendar. I always update that calendar first thing. You will know immediately if anything changes. And you can always go to the events view that is in my Discord. I have an events channel where I also update these events. I need to put all my September dates in there right now. So, but if you go to professormesser.com/calendar, everything is in there. We'd love to have you back for another one of those. Well, although my part of the study group is over, we now open up the phone lines, or open up the chat lines, I guess, and we are going to do your part of the study group, where now you get to ask me questions. So stick around for what we call our study group after show, and you're welcome to ask anything you would like in the chat room. I don't know if I'll answer anything you put in the chat, but we'll give it a shot. Don't forget about our success bundle. Go to professormesser.com/netsuccess, and our vouchers, discounted vouchers. You don't need a voucher code. You don't need a browser plug-in. You don't have to hunt around the internet for some type of coupon code. You simply go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and they're already discounted. ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Don't forget about our YouTube channel. And if you liked this study group, we'd love it if you would just thumbs up the video that's right in front of you right now. That would help us a lot. Help us even more if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell button so you know when the latest videos are posted. And don't forget about our Network Plus pop quiz questions once a week. You'll see those on Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter. And you'll get one with a pretty picture on ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram. Thanks for being here in the first half of the study group. Stick around for the after show. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Got a little too close there. Okay, we have hydrated. Let's bring the camera back up. That would be good. Where's the picture of me? Where did I go? There I am. It's time for the after show, everybody. Okay, we did very well with the questions this month. Thank you for your help with those. Now it's the time, though, where I get to answer your questions. So if you are online on the in the chat room, you're either on the YouTube chat, which is certainly one you'll find if you're on the YouTube channel right now, or if you're on my website at ProfessorMesser.com/live, there's the link. It's the same chat. It's exactly the same chat. So you're able to, or I'm able to see the chat on my side so that I can see what questions you might be asking. You can simply put your question into that chat room. Hopefully I'll see it as it goes by and we can answer some of those questions that come by. So a question from Synot in the chat room. Do I need an online lab to study for Network Plus? Which do I recommend? The lab part is one of those 4 things I always tell you you should do for your studies. You should get a good book. Not everybody does that, but you really should. You should, of course, get a good video course. Hey, I know where you can get one of those. You should get maybe some hands-on. That's where the labs come in. That's your 3rd piece. And the 4th piece is some good Q&A, which we've already talked about. Hopefully we'll be seeing in the coming months from me, so you get some good Q&A. But in the meantime, I do have some options for you for labs and for Q&A. Let's see if I can bring up my own website. It's a real challenge of me clicking things. Under the Network Plus option here is a link for Network Plus study recommendations. We'll click through the Google ads as we get there. And we have in here a good breakdown of some study resources. Obviously, my videos are listed because I said videos are important. I said books are important. And of course, I include CompTIA's official Network Plus study guide for the N10-008. That's on my site because I am a CompTIA Platinum partner. They allow me to put that there. What's different about my site, though, is if you buy the study guide on my site, not only are you getting the official study guide from CompTIA at a bit of a discount, which they don't do on their website, but you get a copy of my course notes for free. Now, if you already have my course notes and you would like a discount, let me know, and I can give you a coupon for those to break that down. I also have, and when I break these things down, my Ultimate Study Pack, which includes CompTIA's Network Plus Learn, or CompTIA CertMaster Learn. And it's sort of a book. It's a set of notes, it's flashcards, it's performance-based questions, it's practice questions, all in one piece, all in one single product. It's quite a product. It's quite a complete and comprehensive study guide. All those 4 things I said you need, 3 of those are in there. The only thing that's not in there are labs, is the hands-on. But that's okay, because CompTIA has labs. In fact, I'm going to play the video I did of the labs. I say I'm going to play it. There we go. Of the labs that are on their site. We'll watch it together as this is going through. The labs are all in virtual machines. So these are really legitimate and not on a rail, which I also think I really like about this. I like the fact that even you could go off the documented path if you really wanted to. But they give you step-by-step instructions. And in the video that I have next to this, I give you a demonstration of starting up a system. This is Kali Linux, working through one of the labs that they have here. They also have Windows labs. All of the things dealing with networking are in there. So that's what those labs are. And I love the CertMaster labs. I have used probably every lab software that's out on the market. And what I love about that is that this set of CertMaster labs has taken everything I wanted in a lab system and put it in one platform. Every other platform seems to be missing one or two features. Well, they sort of did everything. This is really a new set of labs that CompTIA has only recently introduced, and they did a really, really good job on them. I like them a lot. If I didn't like them, I would not have put them on my website. So that's why that interactive pack that's there includes not just the labs, but of course includes my course notes as well. And again, if you already have my course notes and you'd like a discount, I can give you a coupon to be able to get a little bit off of that interactive pack, so that can be there. This is pretty useful. So the question with those, someone was asking, I'm using the interactive pack. How long should I use these resources before taking the exam and passing the first time? Well, the way that you would know if you are ready to pass the exam is you use the exam objectives. That is probably the best barometer. So let me bring up the Network Plus objectives. I'm going to drive into, I've got the Network Plus N10-008 objectives right in front of me. Let's break these down and see if we can really understand what we should be looking at on here. So I'm going to scroll down the objectives. We're going to start with the very first section under Networking Fundamentals. And the first section is 1.1, compare and contrast the Open Systems Interconnection, OSI, model layers, and encapsulation concepts. So here's where you can go through this list and one at a time go through and check off everything you know. So you should be able to explain to someone what these things are. For example, you should be able to explain layer 1 is physical, layer 2 is data link, layer 3 is network. We did these earlier in the study group. So there's your OSI model, and you need to explain what each layer of the model does. Then the other part of section 1.1 is data encapsulation and decapsulation within the OSI model context, including the Ethernet header, IP header, TCP UDP headers, TCP flags, payload, and MTU. So already there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 different objectives right there that we need to know about. Now, if we can explain to somebody else what TCP and UDP headers are, what TCP flags do, what a payload is, what an MTU is, then you got these. You can check all of those off and go to the next part of the exam objectives. But if you're going through this and you think, TCP flags, I don't remember exactly what the TCP flags do again. Let me go and do more research. So I'm gonna circle that one. I'm gonna mark it. I'm gonna make a note, and I'm gonna go through and study those so that I can check that one off my list. Now let's keep going, and we'll just keep going through all the bullets. Now the challenge you have, of course, is as I scroll through the exam objectives, it's almost ridiculous. It gets a little crazy, doesn't it? There's a lot of bullets in here, but that's the way really every certification exam is there's a lot of content that you would have to know. And in the world of certification exams, the information that's in the Network Plus objectives, not really that different or comprehensive than anything else. This, in fact, is relatively little. If you'd like to see a lot of bullets, go over and look at the Security Plus objectives. It's enormous. So that's why I tell people, just use this as your checklist. As soon as you're able to check off every single one of those bullets, and there's a lot, you'll be ready for the exam. That's how I'm still scrolling as I'm talking. You will be ready for the exam. And finally, I got to the end in section 5.5, given a scenario, troubleshoot general networking issues. Okay. So once you've listed all those, you've checked through all those, you've crossed out every single one of these, you've circled the ones you weren't sure about, you've gone back and studied them, and you've crossed them out. Now you're ready to take your exam. That's what I would recommend. So that's the deal. That's the perspective on this. Let's backtrack a little bit with the question earlier about WDM, specifically the dense mode WDM. The 160 channels in DWDM combine together to create 1.6 terabits per second. It's BPS with a small b, not a large b. Terabits per second, not terabytes per second. But that's really the interesting part of WDM is you're able to squeeze a lot of channels through that. So you could have really 160 different network connections, if you would, going through that. And the overall cumulative bandwidth that you would be using across all of those 160 channels totals 1.6 terabits per second. So that's the most common. There are other types of DWDM. In fact, there are newer flavors that go even faster. So that's just a good example of DWDM and how it could be applied in some of the most common forms of DWDM. Fortunately, the Network Plus exam does not go into that level of detail where you would have to know a lot about many, many different types of DWDM. In fact, we don't even get into what type of fiber you would need, what type of equipment you would need, how you would deploy this, what you would be putting over this, what's the case for this. Not really incredibly important for the Network Plus exam. More important that you know when somebody says, hey, we're looking at a DWDM solution, that you would be able to go, oh, I know what that is. They're putting up a single fiber connection. They're running multiple channels inside of that. You should already know these things to be able to break out the details of that. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, is that the Network Plus exam has a lot of topics on it, but all the topics really go only so deep because we just don't have time to dive into everything at a detailed level. There are certain topics that really do go into detail. So it's not like that's the only thing that you would find on this exam. Some of these topics really do go into detail about all of these. And when they do, there are multiple bullets that really take you down as far as you need to go. If you're ever wondering when you're going through these, are they looking for more detail? What type of context do they need? Just go to my videos, because I've designed my videos to give you, hopefully, exactly the right amount of context so that you'll know when you sit for the exam, okay, I'm ready to go because I know everything that was in that video. That's what it's designed to give you. Now, other people will tell me, but I want to know more. I want to go outside the scope of this. I want to load up Cisco's packet tracer and build my own network and send data from one side of the network to the other. Absolutely do that. That'd be a fun lab to do. But that requires a bit of knowledge of how to design the network, how to configure the switches and routers, how to connect all these things together, and of course, how to use packet tracer. All of those things are interesting and could provide you with some context, but they're unnecessary for the Network Plus exam. But it's one of those things where if you know more in that particular vein, it can help you understand the fundamentals perhaps even better. For most people, I think the types of labs I showed earlier, the CertMaster labs, for example, are a good choice because you don't have to know how to set up packet tracer. You don't have to worry about understanding router or switch configurations. You don't have to learn how to build a network. Everything's already built for you. You sort of jump into the lab and it takes you step by step through the lab so you understand the topics that you're dealing with that are in here. And so what I'm saying, it is not important. In fact, you will not get a question on the exam on interpreting Wireshark captures. You won't get one. Would it help you understand more about the things like the OSI layer? It absolutely would, which is why if you look at my OSI video, you'll notice I show you Wireshark captures because it so neatly describes the OSI model in a packetized real-world form. So when I mentioned there's context and then there's additional context, I think most people when they're doing the labbing is looking for the additional context. It doesn't have a direct link back to the exam objectives, but it does add more flavor and more knowledge about the things you're learning in the exam objectives. So that's up to you. I often tell people you could spend the rest of your life studying for things that aren't listed on the exam objectives. But if you stick to this list, if you do nothing but stick to this list, and you never go outside the scope of this list, you don't build your own networks, you don't go through Wireshark captures, you don't do any of those things, you're going to do fine on your exam because you've stuck to the exam objectives. This is perhaps the philosophy to think about as we're looking at earning a certification. You certainly want to know everything that's necessary to earn your certification. But at some point, you will need to expand that knowledge outside of that scope. And of course, that's absolutely important. You should understand more about networking. You should bring in these concepts that you're learning as a foundation in Network Plus and be able to expand on those. Incredibly useful. But for the purposes of getting your Network Plus, not important right now. Right now, we need to learn exactly what's expected of us on this exam, and then we're good. So that's my point with these. Now, that's an interesting approach for me because my background is specifically in protocol analysis. I worked for 10 years for Network General. I was a systems engineer that knew everything about their sniffers, distributed, different networking technologies, had all my CNX certifications, incredibly useful. But none of that's important for the Network Plus exam, to pass the Network Plus exam. It's important overall in your travels through technology and networking in general. So that's my recommendation for you is stick to the objectives, but think outside the scope of the objectives when necessary. I think that might be providing you a little bit more value. Now, maybe in the future, CompTIA will add more Wireshark questions, or they'll add questions about what you see in a Wireshark protocol decode. You know, those might be useful to do that, but they currently don't. So that's when they start adding that, I'll start sticking it in my videos as well. So we'll figure out the details. Let's see how we're doing with other questions that have come through. Should be a few others to break down. There is, does CompTIA have CPEH or pen testing? There's a Pen Test Plus exam from CompTIA. I do, whenever somebody talks about pen testing, I always want to know what context you're using, why you would want to know more about the pen testing part of it. Don't get trapped into the industry's the way that they promote pen testing. There are tons of jobs out there in IT security. I guess we could call it cybersecurity, but that doesn't really describe what it is. Cybersecurity isn't a thing. It doesn't really have a definition, but IT security certainly does. And when we talk about Security Plus, we're really talking about IT security. We're talking about controlling and managing and protecting the data that's in an organization's network. And doing it more on the operational side of things. If you will, it's really the part of the company that is managing the defense. You're trying to make sure that no one is able to access or gain access to any of your corporate data, which really is the most important asset of any organization. So the thing that I think is important about pen testing is that it's interesting. It's the thing we always see them do in the Hollywood movies. It has kind of a sexy term. It's the pen testing, and we want to be able to break into people's networks, but do it in a way that helps them. It's interesting. It's an interesting part of security. However, the number of pen testing jobs available certainly are minuscule when compared to the overall set of IT security jobs that you could possibly have. So I would also tell people that pen testing is not a job you start in. It's not your first job in security is pen testing. That would be unusual. There have been instances. It's remarkably rare. Why would you want to put somebody who is not already familiar with the IT security space and put them in charge of doing something with pen testing? It just doesn't make sense. And to be a good pen tester, you need to understand operating systems. You need to understand networks. And not just understand them, but have really an expertise, certainly in Windows, Linux, Mac OS, iOS, iPad OS, Android, and then get into the networking side of things at all OSI layers. Having an expertise in that knowledge that you can then apply to attacking it. That's the beauty of pen testing. So yes, there are courses for pen testing. There are plenty of people that would love to train you on Pen Test Plus, and certainly there's the Pen Test Plus certification. But I would caution you to really examine what employers are looking for when you are applying for a job with pen testing. First, how many jobs are out there for a penetration testing expert? And secondly, what do you need to know to be able to get that job? We often don't even start there for some reason. For some reason, we often start with, let's get a cert, and then let's maybe use that cert for something. We really should be changing that. You really need to approach it from a different perspective. You need to look at all the jobs that are available in your particular market let's say security related jobs, and go through all the job openings, at least the ones that you think you may be qualified for. And for those security jobs, what are they asking for? Do they want you to have a Security Plus? Do they want you to have a Microsoft certification? Do they want you to have cloud certifications? Do they want you to have Red Hat certification? What are they looking for? What do they want you to have? And you may find some of those jobs want you to have a Pen Test Plus or comparable experience, but you will find it's such a small number of jobs available that do that, that it is it's one that you really work into. It's not one that you start with. It's one you become an IT security person, and then you become more detailed and more niche into different areas of IT security. Those areas may be, you may be the encryption expert. You may be the SIM expert. You may be the VPN expert. You may be the next generation firewall expert, or you may be the pen test expert. See how that works? So you've got different types of expertise that you can bring to the table. And pen testing may work for you, it may not work for you. No, pen testing comes with some other requirements. Some of them are very, that deal with a lot of travel. Some pen testing jobs have very little travel. It depends on what you're pen testing and how you're doing it. So I caution people when they talk about pen testing to really understand what they're getting into, because I think a lot of people think, I just want to be a pen tester. I'll go get a pen testing cert, and then I can be a pen tester. No, you can't. It doesn't work that way at all. So don't do that. That's the real key. And it takes a long time to accumulate that knowledge. Even after becoming an expert in IT security and understanding SIMs and next generation firewalls and intrusion prevention and VPNs and encryption and all the other things that come into that particular job, pen testing is a whole nother set of knowledge you have to put on top of that. So absolutely go look into it. Go see if it's for you. Go see if there's jobs in your area that want you to do that. If that's something you're excited about, go work towards it. Go be a pen tester. Absolutely, you should. No question. But just be ready. And you may find that once you get into it and you say, wow, there's not a lot of pen testing jobs out here. That's right. There's not. Just be ready for that. That means that you're just going to have to work that much harder to be able to work yourself into one of those positions. So it is a challenging role. It's a very rewarding role. I think if there's one thing IT people universally do, is we are problem solvers. We love a problem. We love to examine the problem. We like to find a solution to the problem. And the pen testing is probably a very direct and visceral representation of that. You're typing, you're getting into the system, you're running an exploit, and boom, you got in. You get immediate feedback that you just did your job well. It's not quite the same when you're working on a SIM or you're compiling threat library, or you're putting together a next generation firewall configuration. It's not quite the same thing. So that's why I tell people, make sure you understand the market first, then direct your efforts into a particular part of your career. It will serve you well. And if you're looking to get into IT security and you're looking to do pen testing, go learn everything you can learn about every operating system you can get your hands on. Go learn everything you can learn about every networking thing you can get your hands on. Those two things together will position you very well for moving into an IT security role. So that's my systems engineer sort of perspective as to what I've seen traveling around the world and talking to hundreds and hundreds or thousands of companies and IT security professionals about what they've done, how they've done it, where they come from, how they got there. It is a challenging track, but it's a very rewarding track, not just in your personal knowledge, but it pays really well too. So I can understand the interest in getting a role in security. It makes perfect sense. Just position yourself properly when you're ready to go there. I think that's really useful. And you're right. It is, I think IT in general, Mike in the chat room said pen testing seems like a lifestyle, staying up to date with security breaches, all of these new exploits and vulnerabilities. Yes, that's absolutely true. That's part of your job, is research. But I'll tell you, from an IT perspective, you're doing that anyway. You're always trying to stay up to date with the latest things. Everybody's reading through the Microsoft Tuesday updates. You're always reading through the list of exploits that was found today. You're always reading through news stories about issues that have occurred with particular systems. And it's the same whether you're learning an operating system, whether you're learning networking, whether you're learning security. It's exactly the same scenario. If you're in the network world, you're staying up to date with all the latest network technologies. If you're in operating systems, you're staying up to date with what the latest updates are going to be and the latest patches and the latest new features coming down the road. IT is constant learning. You never stop learning. You're always reading. You're always keeping up to date. You're always trying to find out the best. And here's the thing that may just drive you crazy. You'll never learn it all. You will never know everything. No one knows everything in IT. And even if you today knew everything, there's a bunch of new stuff that comes out tomorrow. And now you got to learn all that along with it. So that's why I tell people, don't focus so much on a cert. Don't focus so much on a technology. Instead, focus on what people want or need you to do for them. And as long as you keep doing that and you focus your efforts in those things, you're going to do well. If you look at job postings in your area and they're all cloud-based jobs, guess what technologies you need to learn? All cloud-based technologies. If you find some jobs that are specific to Linux, there's a lot of Linux jobs in your area, maybe Linux is what you should be doing. So you need to really do your research. It's not just about picking a cert and going with it. It's about putting together a strategy for your career. This is a pretty important thing. So make sure you're really familiar with that. I think it's incredibly important that, that you follow the right path or the path that makes the most sense. You know, this is a competitive market. There are many people that would love to have these jobs. You're fighting against every single one of them. Make sure you put together the best possible set of credentials. Make sure you've studied the right material. Make sure you get the right kind of certifications. Make sure your resume is written the right way. Make sure you have a cover letter that is different and better than anyone else's. I have a video that even shows you that. So those are sort of a combination of things. It's a strategy. You're putting together all of these different pieces of information to position yourself as being at the top of that list. And it does make a difference. Just shotgunning out the same resume to everybody. I see this all the time on Reddit. People say, I've sent out 100 resumes and nobody's called me back. We should probably look at that resume. Did you customize the resume for each of those 100 jobs that are out there? You didn't? Why didn't you? How'd that work out for you? If I can do a Dr. Phil there real quick. How's that working for you? It's not doing very well. You've sent 100 of these out. Nothing has happened. But you didn't do the work to position it as good as it could be when somebody finally got it in their hand. You thought you could just throw the resume in there and you're done. And in the chat room, as I mentioned cover letters. People going, we supposed to do cover letters? Are we doing cover letters? I didn't think we did cover letters. You should absolutely do cover letters. First, employers will accept the cover letter. That's the most important part. So if they accept it, why wouldn't you send it? Why wouldn't you show the employer why you're the best person for this job in a cover letter? I think most people think of cover letters as a generic letter that you put in front of your resume that has no value whatsoever. And for those people, that's probably has no value whatsoever. They probably sent 100 of them in and have gotten no callbacks yet. But there are ways to build a cover letter that very specifically shows that employer that everything they're asking for in this position are the things that you can provide. The format I like is a T format cover letter. I show that in my video, how more reasons why your resume keeps getting rejected. I have the first video is 5 reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. The second video is 5 more reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. In that second video, I show you an example of how I would take a job description. I just grabbed a job description from the internet, and then I created a cover letter based on that job description so that you could see how easy it was. And I was able to build it in 5 to 10 minutes. We're not talking about an hour's worth of your time. So you can really create not only a cover letter that is useful, but it really has a lot of detail in it. There's other things you can do as well. You could add on to your, in fact, there's a great strategy for adding on to LinkedIn. LinkedIn should be part of your job strategy. There's things you should be doing. I should do a video on that one too, because people are getting jobs by the things they post on LinkedIn without even sending a resume. What? People are not sending a resume to a company. The company's finding them and they're getting a job because of the things they put on LinkedIn. It happens all the time. There's great ways to do this. So if you're simply spraying and praying, you're just shotgunning those resumes out, you're not changing them, there's no cover letter, you're just putting it out there and hoping for the best. Nope, that's not going to work for you. You need a better strategy. And I do have a video on how to get a job in IT with no experience. It's a 30-minute video. I realize that's a long video in the world of YouTube, but all 30 minutes are chock full of data. Sit down, take notes, go through the whole thing, and you will understand my strategy and what I think is a better way to approach all of this, which is I need a formal education. I need IT certifications. I need some type of experience, whether it's paid or unpaid. And then I need to know somebody who already works there. If you have those 4 elements, you're already going to be high up on that list. So that's the key. I think that's pretty important. In the chat room, Siegfried even said, LinkedIn's how I got my current position. Couldn't be happier. It's an amazing position. The pay is awesome. Plus it's work from home. That's a no-brainer right there. That's a gimme. I'll take that one all day. So that's what I would recommend. I think there's lots of other things to do. Having your resume online, having projects that you've done in your lab, posting a summary of those projects on LinkedIn, posting them on your own blog. These things are what employers are looking for. And if you can position yourself to be better than the next person, that's all you're looking for. You know, if the bear is chasing you, the bear's about to attack, and you sit down and put sneakers on. It's that old joke, of course. And the person you're with saying, "What are you doing? The bear's attacking." I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you. So you just need to outrun everyone else to get that job. That's the key. And if you can use any of those techniques to show you're better at this than other people, that's what employers are looking for. That's what I was always looking for. I used to be a manager, a hiring manager. So I would look for certain things in the resumes. I would look for certain things in the cover letters. I'm looking to see if there's some type of passion, if there's some type of extra knowledge, if there's some type of lab that you've been working on, if there's some type of additional technologies that you really like, that you've talked about online, that you work with. You know, you could spend that time, you know, in an instance, in a dungeon online. You could spend your time gaming, or you could take an hour and write and set up just an amazing set of cover letters for your resume. Then you can go in the game. You'll reward yourself afterwards. You know, that's the important part. So really, there's a whole, you know, I focus on get these certifications, A+ Network Plus Security Plus. That's really my focus, is to get you certified in those things. There's a whole set of strategies, objectives, ideas, and things you can do to position yourself the best you can during that job hunt. And it's never, of course, one thing, and it's never easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But there is no easy button for any of these things. It's always a challenge, and it should be. The good stuff is difficult. It does take work. And if you're the one doing the work and nobody else is, you've just outrun the person behind you. And now you don't have to worry about the bear. That's what you should be working on. Next question, Christian asks, are there any plans in the future to make courses for CySA Plus, pen test, etc.? There's pen test again. Let's talk about pen test. No, it's not. I'm concerned once I get to those in a few months. Your courses have been my lifeline success. Thank you. this is one of those where it's really about timing and getting the timing quite right with these certifications. And for me, it's finding the right one. You already know I'm working on the A+ now. I'm finishing up the A+. We need to do some Network Plus practice exams. That's probably next on my list. That definitely is next on my list. But then I got a little bit of time. I got a few months. So what do we do? I don't know. So whenever somebody asks, are there plans in the future to make courses for this? Sure. I got plans. I got lots of plans. Will I ever get to a point where I make CySA Plus or Pen Test or any of those? I don't know. They're probably not at the top of my list. When you get into the niche, like the nicher and Pen Test Plus is really, we've already talked about that. That's super niche. CySA Plus, that's a little broader, but it's still niche-y in the world of IT security. We've got a security certification. So where do we go next? Do we do a different set of technologies? Do we do something in the cloud? Do we do something Microsoft? Do we do something Cisco? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be. I've mentioned before that I never know exactly what direction I'm going because I keep changing it every day. I will say right now as I sit here, I can tell you, I know exactly what I'm going to do next. It's going to be this. But then I wake up tomorrow and I think, it would be really good though. What about that? Okay, I changed my mind. I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that one. Then I wake up the next day and go, you know what I should do? I should do the other. I should not do this or that. I should do the other. Let's do the other. We're doing the other next. That's what, you know what? No, I'm going back to this. So this is the world I live in. We will know what the next course will be when I start making it, because then I'm committed. And until then, I'll just keep kind of flopping around and not giving you an answer and seeing if I can find a way to really narrow down what we should do next on that. So I wish I had an answer for you, Christian. I don't know what those plans will ultimately be, but it'll be something, right? I can't just sit around. I need to keep myself busy. So we will find something there. What will it be? Well, I know exactly what it's going to be. It'll be this. No, it'll be that. No, it's going to be the other. I don't know. That's the challenge. Well, these are good problems, right? If there was nothing to choose from, I'd be in trouble. But I have a world of things to choose from. It's the best kind of problem you can have. So that's the idea. Are my kids into IT? My kids are sort of into IT. I got 3 kids. One has a degree in IT. She's already graduated. One has a degree in cloud computing. He has already graduated. And then I have a third who's still in college, who currently is working on his business management degree, which interestingly enough is the degree that I have. So there's sort of a mix there. There's sort of a smattering of different things there. So you really can't go wrong with either of those. So yeah, I got, I don't know if I would call them into IT. Probably not like I am, but they're not going to be like I am, because that's what my dad does. I don't want to do what my dad does. But this is, what I want to do is I'm sending them out into the world. We'll have the world beat up on them a little bit. And then maybe they'll come and go, well, Dad's doing all right. Maybe we could do something like he does. That's probably how this is going to go. Or it may not. Maybe they'll find their niche. They're like off to the races, like, see you guys later. Wouldn't want to be you kind of thing. We'll figure it out. They will figure it out. The foundation is there, though. They've got the basis. They've got everything they need to make their IT things happen. Now they just need to figure out what makes sense for them. So some of them we'll have to see. That's sort of the beauty of being a parent, is you sort of, here's all the tools you need, put them in your toolbox. Now go out into the world and see what you can fix or break, one of those two things. And we'll see how those tools work out. We may need more tools, we may need different tools, or maybe they want to bring this back and do more of these things. I would like them to do more of this. You talk about doing another course. I could use some help. Get them in here and work on this course. That's the next one. We'll have to see if they go for that. But currently, that's not their gig. They don't want to be anywhere near me working on this stuff. We'll see. It's like any parent. You don't want to, oh, my dad, I got to do the stuff for my dad. Technically speaking, my daughter does work for the company. She does create content for this site. If you've taken any of my daily pop quiz questions in the last few months, you've taken her pop quiz questions. So she's already working towards those things. So I think that's great. We're constantly expanding on that, and there's other projects she's worked on, and you'll see those eventually get out and things that we're doing. But it's working out quite nice. Yeah, that's good stuff. Other questions. If you have a question, there's the link at the bottom of your screen at professormesser.com/live. You can ask that question, stick it into the chat room, and I'll be glad to go through it. I'm going to skip through or flip through some of these other things that are in here. See, I made quite a fuss with the cover letter thing. I really think there's value in anything you can do. I almost tell people what you need to do is just get your boom box, put it on your shoulder, and just stand outside the building blasting whatever song that was. What was the song? Now I have to go watch the movie again. That probably wouldn't work, though. What do you put in the cover letter? I have a whole video on this. It's in the YouTube video description of this. I think it is. I should probably confirm that as I'm telling you that. Let's see. This would be on the YouTube in this video. See, I have to click a lot of things to get back to the content of this video. Was it a Wham song? It might have been. There's got to be a video on the YouTube, right, of exactly that thing. Was it In Your Eyes? Probably was. In fact, I'm almost certain that it was. Now I'm thinking that it was, but then there was the whole Berenstain Bears thing, and that's an issue. So in the YouTube video description, there are links for 5 reasons why your resume keeps getting rejected. If you want to know about the cover letter, it's in the video 5 more reasons your resume keeps getting rejected. And there are links to those videos in the YouTube video description. That's where that is listed. It's the 5 more reasons where I go through the cover letter and why I think it's important. There's other links in here about getting a job with IT job without experience, how to install Dig in Windows. That's a good one. The Pearson VUE digital whiteboard, which is useful if you're planning to take an exam at home. So different tips and things that might help you, things that have come up in this study group. So hopefully that can give you some perspective too. Those are good things there. I don't know if In Your Eyes would be the right one to blast outside the HR offices. Probably not, right? I don't know if that would work. It always reminds me that companies sometimes will do cringy marketing things. That's probably not the cringy marketing thing you want to put yourself in, is standing outside with the boombox. So don't do that one. All the other stuff I said, yes, do that, but that one maybe not so much. I think you'd have to really have a good handle on that anyway. Plus, you'd have to know what the heck I was talking about to begin with. Any recommendations for prepping for the Network Plus exam? Recently took A+, had a course on networking, now want to take Network Plus. Well, you've got a good foundation there. If you already have an A+ and you took a networking course, you kind of have everything you need to kind of put together. I think the best one, the best thing to do is to go through the exam objectives. We were looking at that earlier. Do I have it? It's right here. It's just go through these objectives. So, for example, Section 1.3, summarize the types of cables and connectors and explain which is the appropriate type for a solution. Well, I need to know copper. I need to know twisted pair, including Cat5, Cat5e, which physically identical cables. Cat6, Cat6a, Cat7, and Cat8. I need to know coaxial and RG6. I need to know twin axial. I need to understand the termination standards of 568A and 568B and why they have nothing to do with a crossover cable. Fiber, single mode, and multi-mode. I'm adding my own things into this list, aren't I? Connector types, including LC, ST, ST, SC, MT, RJ, APC, and UPC. What is it with the abbreviations, people? The crazy part is that we use all of these every day in networking. It is constant. Somebody was mentioning earlier in the chat, man, there's there's no way all these abbreviations are used. Yes. Oh, yeah. And more, actually. We love abbreviations in networking. We just love the acronyms. So you have to know the acronyms. Sorry. It's kind of a challenge. I think for a lot of people that jump into Network Plus, the acronyms almost become a rote memorization. It's kind of a downer to have to do it. But we use these so much that we often just end up talking about the technology by the acronym, to the point that sometimes we have to stop and say, SFP, I need an SFP for the switch. The SFP, what's SFP stands for? What's SFP stand for again? I can't remember, because you just forget. Oh, it's small form factor pluggable. But we never say, oh, I need a small form factor pluggable for the switch. We never say that. We always say, I need an SFP. You have a multi-mode SFP? I need one of those. Give me. So that's that. We just started to use the abbreviation now as the thing. Sort of how Federal Express used to be a next day delivery company. Federal Express doesn't exist anymore. FedEx exists because nobody called it Federal Express. Could you hand me a Federal Express box? I need a Federal Express air bill. Just hand me a FedEx box. So they just thought okay, why are we calling ourselves something that nobody else is? We'll call ourselves FedEx. So it sort of happens that way in networking too. It's exactly the way it goes through. Are there any templates for projects based on a given scenario for use for resume cover letter? Not really. When in the video, I show you the T cover letter. It's the same cover letter for everything, but you customize what's in the T. So the way that a T cover letter works is certainly there's that first paragraph you put in, like, thank you so much for the opportunity to send a resume for this position. This is the type of thing I've been looking for. I think I'd be a great fit, and here's why. On the left side of the T are all the things the employer asked for. Knowledge of Microsoft operating systems, knowledge of Palo Alto Networks firewalls, knowledge of Cisco switches, whatever it happens to be. Take their list of things they want you to have, you put on the left side. On the right side of the T, you put your connection to the thing they want. Oh, knowledge of Microsoft operating systems. And then you put on your side, certified in Microsoft this, Microsoft that, Microsoft the other. Oh, they're looking for somebody familiar in Palo Alto Networks firewalls. On the other side, you would put, been using these firewalls for 10 years, have the Palo Alto Network Systems Engineer certification. Next one. So you're showing someone saying, here are all the things we wish we had. And on the right side, you're saying, wish no more. I have all of these things for you. Here I am. Pay me a lot of money and let's get started. That's what that cover letter is all about, which, by the way, is much more valuable. It's almost a second resume, really. It's your second CV. It's almost like promoting the highlights of your resume before they see your resume. And that's valuable. Nobody wants to just look through every resume coming through. Here's another set of 100 resumes. Let me read through all these resumes. But if I've got something that's telling me you asked for this, I got that. You asked for this, I got that too. Wow, this person really has got a good list of things. That's everything I want. Let's call them. Let's get them, because all you're really trying to do is get through the next level. Get to the next step in the process. So that's what I would recommend too, is that T format, because I think it's valuable. If you're simply creating a cover letter that says, I would be a great fit for this job. Thank you for your consideration. Signed, Professor Messer. That's a waste of time for everybody. Please don't send that cover letter. Please don't do that. Just don't send a cover letter if that's what you're going to do. That's worthless. It's the same thing as the top of your resume is having your objective. You're sending me a resume. I'm pretty clear what the objective is at this point. What I want to know is, are you a good fit? Do you have the knowledge and the skills I need for this job? And if it's spelled out, that's all the better. Have I talked enough about cover letters today? I believe I have. Let's not do any more. What are my thoughts on physical network simulators? What type of physical network simulator are you referring to? That seems odd. Wouldn't a physical network simulator be a network? I'm thinking that's what that is, right? Physical network simulator. It's called a switch and a router and a firewall. There are, maybe you're referring to software that allows you to build a virtual network in a sort of a simulated mode. And those are amazing. You should absolutely do that. That'd be fun. I think that's a good project if you're interested in networking. It's a little outside the scope of Network Plus, as I mentioned earlier, but there's free stuff you can do. Go to Cisco, go to whatever your favorite search engine is, and search for Cisco Packet Tracer. That's what you want. Cisco Packet Tracer. Packet Tracer is a application that Cisco has built. It is the focus of that application is to get you certified in Cisco technologies, but it's free. You can build out a network in minutes, multi-switch, multi-router network in minutes, connect out PCs, virtual PCs on the end of it, send packets from one side to the other, put it into a stop motion mode where you send a packet and you can watch every step. What's the first thing the packet does? It goes to this router. What's that router do? It does all these things. What's the next step? It goes to this switch. I mean, you can really watch it as it goes through step by step, or you can watch it in real time. You can capture packets. You can add other components. You can add other switches, other routers, voice over IP information. You just add a ton of information. It is remarkable. Do I have it on my system? Packet Tracer. I'm sure I do. I just have to remember how to log in. It requires authentication with Cisco. So you have to build, the only thing they require is that you have an account with them. So for some people, they don't like that. Well, that's what they require. So don't, that's your thing. Don't use Packet Tracer. I'm going to try to get it loaded on here. I have not run it, Packet Tracer, since I installed my new OS, because I'm now running on an M1 and not an Intel platform. So we'll have to see what's here. But Packet Tracer is really good. Another good one would be Wireshark. I think Wireshark is a little more challenging because Wireshark really does have a bit of a ramp when you start learning it. And that ramp can be, involved. And it's not something where you can push a button and understand what you're seeing. It's really more about, am I able to understand packets? So there's a little bit more knowledge you need to really get going with Wireshark, but Wireshark is great as well. Sometimes that's what you need. Just throw Wireshark on, capture some packets, and then when you're faced with these thousands of packets that you've captured, now what do? How do you interpret it? It's almost like the Matrix, where you're watching these packets go by and you're like, I don't even understand what I'm looking at. What is this? But someone who's worked with it enough can watch the packets go by and they'll go, whoa, what was that? Hold on, bring this one back. I want to see that one. Plus, Wireshark has now introduced a number of nice expert systems that can look through the data for you and identify errors, problems, response times, and other very useful details. So that's why I would focus on that one. So I just got my Packet Tracer up, but now, of course, I have to authenticate. This is live television, people, when we do this. Cisco. I need Cisco and what? Of course, I've got 17 different Cisco authentications. I'm going through my my password, my 1Password, to find the account that would be associated, and we're going to see if I can figure this out. I can't remember if I used this email address or a different email address. Is it one that I used to sign in to a Cisco account for something else? Okay, I managed to get it running. So let's bring it over to this side. Let's make it full screen, and I'll show you. This is Packet Tracer. Blank screen. This is it. That is it. Whenever you get into at least understanding some of the things about this, it's remarkable. So there's all kinds of things at the bottom. Right now I have routers. There's switches. You can see them down here at the bottom. So I'm 2960 switch. We'll put it right here. So there's a switch I put just into this platform, which is a logical view of the network. You've just built a switch. If I double click the switch, it even shows it to me. There's the switch I just built. So you don't have to buy a switch. You don't have to purchase these kits off of eBay. You just go here, and then you can change the way the switch looks. Oh, you want to work at the CLI? Here it is. So you want to become knowledgeable in Cisco. You want to understand what happens at the CLI. You can do it by simply going to Packet Tracer. There's no switch. In fact, this is not switch software. This is an emulation of switch software. I'm going to scroll all the way up. So this was the switch booting. Here's all the stuff, the memory, Cisco Systems, West Tasman Drive. Been there often. Here we go. Keep scrolling down. And then press return to get started because this is a brand new switch. It doesn't have a username and password, and it gives me a switch option. But now it's up to you to know what to do. You have to know to be able to go into enable mode. You have to be able to show everything that's in here. You have to be able to work through the Cisco commands. However, if you're just getting started with Cisco and you know none of this and you don't want to work at the command line, there are things you can configure in the front end of Packet Tracer where you can change the switch name, the serial number. You can add different settings for an interface, change the VLAN that it happens to be on without knowing any Cisco. So you can simply create multiple switches, multiple routers. Let's go back to that router config. Let's put 2911. That's a really old router. Put them in here. Now we need to connect them. I'll click maybe an Ethernet connection. That's not the one I wanted, but we're going to click it anyway. We're going to go from gigabit 00 to fast Ethernet 0. Oh, I clicked it to the console. I plugged in the wrong thing. But now you're starting to connect things together. So now you've got a way to configure this system without knowing any command line. And then you could even, there's a PC on here somewhere. I could start putting on this system printers, computers. Here's a PC. Put a PC on this side of the switch. Let's connect this PC. We'll plug into a fast Ethernet connection and plug it into the switch on fast Ethernet 012. Now we got an Ethernet connect. See how quickly I just built that? I just built it like instantly. So that's just 3 devices. And once you have the PC set up, you can drill down into it. You can go to a command line on the desktop. We'll do a terminal config or command line. And now you're at the command line. There's your IP config. You can assign it IP addresses. You can start pinging across the network. You can do web browsing, IP configs, VPNs, mid browsers. They're all in here. This is a remarkable application. And how much is it? It's free. It's a free app. So is it necessary that you know Packet Tracer to be able to earn your Network Plus? It is not. Would that help you maybe understand the context of routing and switching and the other? Maybe it will. So that's Packet Tracer. I love Packet Tracer. I've used it extensively for things that I've done. It's a great way to set up, does that work? What if I set it up with EIGRP? What if I change that to OSPF? What if I add a WAN link? What if I add this network connection? And then once you do all of that, there's a link down here. This is all real time, but you could set it up in simulation mode where you can stop and start well, you can't see because my big head's in the way, but down here is the play controls. So it kind of gives you a feel. So you can play, stop, step through all of these things and watch as the packets go through the network. Pretty awesome. Pretty useful to have those there. So I would recommend if someone is wanting to know more about the network, you want to get more knowledge of how these things connect together. You just want to see if you really understand. Let's plug in a switch and a router and a configuration, set up some IP addresses, and trust me, there are tons of videos on the internet, on the tube, that will step you through the introduction of these things. Packet Tracer is great for that. So that's my recommendation for those of you wanting to go sort of the lab, but to have it more than a lab. You want it to really be something that you can work with and play around with and just have sort of a sandbox. This is our version of some type of block related game. So if you want to, this is Netcraft. Can we call it that? No, let's not. Packet Tracer is a good name for it. So This is a very good way to just play around with the network. Now, if you think you need more of a directed learning, you need more of a directed lab, then maybe the CertMaster labs would be a better choice, because then you would have different operating systems that are already built, routers and switches that are already built. They take you step by step through the process of how you would configure those. You don't have to learn this from the bottom. You don't have to have any knowledge of the command line. They tell you what to do. Well, then the CertMaster labs, the interactive pack on my website would be a great choice for that. But I think this Packet Tracer is just fun. Play around with it. And what I like about it is there's no financial investment, but you have effectively everything you need to be able to earn a CCNA just from this. Maybe not everything. A book would be good. Videos would be good. But this, from the lab part, this is all you would need. The hands-on part, this is all you would need for the CCNA. And then, of course, you need the Q&A. Those are your 4 things. There's 4 elements. This fits one of those 4 elements very well on the Cisco side. It is very Cisco-centric. It's not easy. There is a bit of a ramp to get up and running. But once you figure it out and get just enough knowledge of it, you can effectively build out a big network configuration in a matter of minutes, connect everything together, ping from one side to the other, and your network's running. It's a great way to do it. And of course, on their exams, on the Cisco exams, there may be cases where you are presented with, here's the output of the command line. What do you do? That's the idea. How would you say your Network Plus course is to the actual test? You're not my only study source. You're my main. I find the Network Plus book too technical, and the order of the topics seems random. Well, you're probably not wrong with that, George. I wouldn't think it's random. The challenge you have when you are working from a book is that the author of the book has a particular style and a series of topics they want to teach you in a particular order. And in most cases, a book is going to be in a different order than the CompTIA exam objectives. Let's go back to that just so we have a perspective of this. So if we were to look at the exam objectives, Section 1.0 starts with 1.1, compare and contrast the open systems interconnection, OSI model layers, and encapsulation concepts. But notice that we're learning about the OSI model before we ever learn about what a packet is, before we ever learn about what a frame is, before we understand what IP is, before we even understand a network. We're already talking about the OSI model. So that's why a book almost never starts with the OSI model, because there's other things the book author prefers teaching you first to kind of guide you through the path to make you understand what the OSI model is once we get there. Because I would want to know, how does IP work? What is a network? Give me an introduction to networking. Give me an introduction to IP. Make me understand what TCP and UDP are. Help me understand what an IP address is. Help me understand what a MAC address is. Those maybe things might be more beneficial going through before you get to an OSI model. However, the OSI is the first thing in the exam objectives. This brings up a challenge for me, because if I'm building videos, do I create videos in what I think the right order should be, or do I create videos that follow this order? And what we found with really through the years is that I present the videos in this order because it's easy to find what you're looking for. That way, if you're reading a book by one author and it follows one format, they will usually cross-reference. In Chapter 1, they're going to give you Introduction to IP. And what they're going to tell you is that correlates back to Section 1.4 of the exam objectives that talk about IPv4 and IPv6. You know, you're already into Section 1.4, and it's really the first thing that's in that book. You go to another book, and they might start with port numbers. So they're jump to Section 1.5. So every book is different. But as long as you have the cross-reference in the book, you can always, and you know, they're starting in Chapter 1 with Section 1.4. Well, then all you need to go in my videos is to Section 1.4 and follow that. So if I did yet another customized order, no one would ever find anything. So that's why my videos follow the exact same numbering scheme as the exam objectives and the exact same topics as the exam objectives, because it's easier to find things. I'm also I'm not oblivious to the fact that not everybody's going to go through every video. Not everybody's going to start with the first video. Not everybody's going to start with the last video. It's going to be a mix. Some people will simply come across the video, watch that one, and they're done. Maybe they watch one of my videos. So in that particular case, what's first and what's second, what's third doesn't even matter. But I found generally through the years, if I just keep the same ordering and numbering and format as the CompTIA exam objectives, anybody can find anything they're looking for. So that's it. That's the key. And that's why people say, well, I need an index. You have one. It's called the exam objectives. This is the index. So if you go through this exam objectives and you go into section 3 and you're doing a study on common documentation that talks about physical network diagrams, floor plans, rack diagrams, IDFs, MDFs, and you think, I need to know more about that topic. I wish there was a video on it. Oh, wait, there is. It's in section 3.2. And then you can go directly to my index. It's on my site into section 3.2, or go to the YouTube list, the playlist, and just go down to 3.2 and just watch this video. So it's in there. And I do have pretty good descriptions on my website of every video and the topics that are in there. And if you look at my YouTube videos, the tags that are on the video, which hardly anybody ever looks at, but I tag every video with all of these objectives so that are in the video. So you can go back and go, oh, IDF and MDF are in this because there's a IDF and MDF are tagged. So you know, oh, that's the video with IDF and MDF, even though it may not even be in the video description and it may not even be obvious by the name of the video. It's in the tag, so you know you have the right video. So that's how I approach that particular problem. It's more of an organizational problem than anything else. The important part and the good part, all the objectives from the exam objectives are also in every video. So that's it. C. Harris in the chat room says, the CompTIA website shows the new Network Plus N10-008 will be available on 9/15. It does not say that, actually. Let's go to the CompTIA website, CompTIA.org. It sort of says that. Actually, you're right. What you put there is correct, except you said will be available. So let's go to the CompTIA website. Let's choose Network Plus. And you can see if we go to exam details, the N10-008 launch date is September 15th of last year. So it's already been out since September. So that's it. It's available. The N10-007 will retire. We scroll down here, is retired on June 30th, 2022. So it retired in June. So it's already gone for English speaking. So the N10-008 videos have been out forever. They were already out when this thing was released. So go to the N10-008. It's already available. It's been available. It's been available since last year. You can absolutely go to that one. That's it. So I know it's kind of weird, the dates and the overlap. They always overlap they tend to overlap about 6 months with all the videos. So you get this weird time where 007 is out. Then they release 008, but 007 continues to be available for another 6 months. So it becomes a confusing time for everyone where, wait, is one out, not the other? Are they both out at the same time? When does one disappear? When does the other one appear? It's like, unless you know there's an overlap, it's almost overwhelming to figure out what that is. But that's why the 008 has been out since the 15th of September last year. So it's been out almost a year now. That's crazy. I feel like I just finished that one. It's been out a year. So that's it. And indeed, the English language version has retired on June the 30th. It's no longer available. N10-007, not there. Sorry. Not going to happen. It's gone. CompTIA 007. 008 is what is available for English-speaking countries, and it's the one you should be focusing on. As I mentioned, all of your study materials should say N10-008. Do not use study materials that say N10-007. Any tips for studying the performance-based questions in 008? Yes, well, I have a few. The first is in the beginning of every study group, you'll notice that the beginning of this one, the first new question was a performance-based question. I have a new performance-based question every month, and they go back about 12 months. So after 12 months, I don't repeat the question, but it's a similar style with different content. So I effectively have created 12 performance-based questions for Network Plus, and you can find those by going back 12 months of my study groups. So that's my first tip for performance-based questions. When I release someday in the coming months a practice exams book, it will also have performance-based questions in there. The important thing about performance-based questions that I think people misunderstand is that they are not asking you information that you don't know. They're not asking you information that is different than the exam objectives. They're simply asking you the same information from your exam objectives. So you go to this objective, all these things we've been talking about, they're asking you information that comes from this list. They're just asking you in a way that isn't multiple choice. That's all a performance-based question is. In fact, people will often come back to me and say, it asked me a matching question or a fill in the blank, or they put me in a command prompt, but it was all things we have already talked about. That's right. So don't worry so much about how they're asking the question. You should instead be thinking about where should I be learning this content, and it should come directly from your exam objectives. So performance-based questions are just another way to ask a question. There's nothing too exciting about them. Some of them can be involved. They have multiple steps, and sometimes that throws people. But if you look at it, some of these are like you drag and drop 5 things and you're done. Off to the next question. That's what I would recommend doing. And if another topic, and this is a good tip, and it's one that actually does come from the exam notes that I have, is that why don't you skip the performance-based questions, go straight to multiple choice, because you get about a handful of performance-based questions. You might get 5 or so, somewhere in there. But the rest of the questions you get are multiple choice. So the vast majority of the exam are multiple choice questions. So skip the performance-based, stick to multiple choice questions, go through all the multiple choice questions. And what I find is the multiple choice-based questions jog my brain about topics that when I come back to the performance-based questions, I now remember, I already saw a question about something like this that covered this technology. I'm already in the zone. I'm already in that mode to answer that particular performance-based question. The thing you have to do, though, is watch your time. There's a clock on the top. It's constantly counting down. Watch your time. Time management is so important on these exams. So although you are skipping the performance-based questions, remember you got to come back to them. But if you save 10 to 15 minutes for performance-based, I think you're probably in pretty good shape. But get through every multiple choice question first, and I think you're good. There's some people that said they do better by going through the performance-based to begin with, get it out of the way, get it out of their system. As long as you're watching the clock, you don't want to go through those first 5 questions and burn half your time. That you do not want to do. And there have been people that have told me, I've gone through all of the multiple choice questions, and before I had a chance to circle back to the performance-based, I ran out of time. All I was able to do was answer multiple choice-based questions. And then they said, and guess what? I passed. Which sort of threw everybody for a loop, because we've often thought the performance-based questions must be worth an enormous number of points. They must be an overwhelming number of points. Well, it turns out that's probably not the case. Now, we don't know for sure. This is only conjecture and rumor, and we're sort of guessing on what people are telling us and assuming they're telling us the right thing. But I would think that there are people that don't take don't answer any of the performance-based that are still passing their exam. So there's hope for us all, is all I'm saying. The performance-based questions might just be a bonus if you can answer them, if you really know your stuff. And that's the key. You have to, of course, know your stuff on the multiple choice to really balance it out right. Pretty important. But that is really an important consideration. As turns out, performance-based questions may not be worth as much as you might think they are worth. And you may not necessarily need to get any of them right if you've done the multiple choice based questions extremely well. So that's your trade-off. I would like you to see all of them done very well. I would like you to do very well on the performance-based questions, so that's not even an issue. But there's ways to not worry so much about it, and maybe you shouldn't worry so much about it, and really focus on those. Question in the chat from R. Well played, R. What fields can I join with a computer science degree and a Network Plus certification? Those are two different areas of technology, aren't they? Computer science degrees are focused primarily on application development and hardware creation, hardware design. They're very focused on coding, not scripting, coding, like building an app, building a web-based application, building a mobile app, building a multi-tiered application in the cloud. That is computer science. Designing hardware, implementing the hardware components, designing the software that runs on that hardware, working with these operating systems for the hardware. That's computer science. The world of IT is really separate from that. Even though it doesn't seem that way, I have a screenshot in my How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience where I have the Venn diagram of computer science and IT, and they barely fit together. They touch a little bit on each other. But the vast majority of computer science and the vast majority of IT do not touch each other, have nothing to do with each other, which is why when you walk into most places, there will be an entire group of people that do development, and then there's the IT department. So, but they use computers. Isn't it the same thing? No, not even close. Development is a completely different animal. It is literally a science, computer science. It is difficult, so difficult that it really does take your career and really focusing on that application development side to really build properly developed and secure applications. You would not want me to make your application. I am not going to code an application very well. I have coded applications. They are, if an expert looked at that code, they would be horrified. They would say, "What are you doing?" Yeah, and I would say, "But it compiled. It worked. It's functional." They say, "Yes, but never show this to another human being. This is just awful." They would look at it and go, "I can't believe a human did this." Maybe I'm speaking too badly of myself, but I really think that's pretty accurate. If I had to write an app, that's how it would work, but it would not be pretty. And so I don't. And really nobody in IT does. You often have people who are in the world of politics, people at higher levels will tell us that everyone in the world needs to learn how to code. No, we don't, because we don't code. If anything, in IT, we script. I guess technically that is coding. If you wanted to be that person, I look forward to your cards and letters. That technically you're right. That is coding. But I think coding is such a broad term that you need to be very specific. If you want to really have powerful skills and be able to promote yourself in IT and really work up the level in IT, you really need to do a very good job at understanding how to script with PowerShell and or Python. Those are two good places to start. So if you can really learn scripting in PowerShell, really learn scripting in Python, and be able to script with any of those to automate, to orchestrate, to have things happen automatically, those are the tools that will allow you to do that. What we don't do in IT is Java, C++, really not even JavaScript. Really, we focus on other types of scripting languages. We don't build apps. We don't troubleshoot apps. We don't maintain apps. We don't patch apps. We don't write code for the apps. We don't support the apps. We deploy the app, and we make sure the app continues to run on these platforms, and we protect the data that was created by the app. Somebody else wrote the app. That's IT. There's a completely different set of jobs depending on what you want to do. So it's interesting. You say, what can I do with computer science and then Network Plus? And this may be, and you can tell me, because when you go to a university, universities don't tend to teach or train IT-related topics, but they do teach computer science. Every university teaches just tons of computer science. You can have tons of programming languages you can learn. There are classes you can take on designing hardware, on implementing real-time operating systems on this hardware, building IoT devices. That's computer science. But they don't spend hardly, in fact, a remarkably few universities have anything related to Microsoft operating systems, Cisco networking, next generation firewalls. They don't. They simply do not. And it's a little infuriating because there's probably just as many opportunities, if not more, for IT professionals than there are for computer science professionals. Certainly it's comparable. So it's weird that it's not comparable at the university level. But universities are famous for saying, we don't train, we teach. We are not in the business of training. And if you want to be a Microsoft person or a Cisco person, you would have to go to a training class for that. We teach here. Okay, I get it. Yes, all right, you teach. All right, enough of the over-the-top theatrics with the elitism that comes from that. And I speak, of course, as someone who has a college degree. The part that's infuriating is that there's a huge number of jobs out there for people that are well established and knowledgeable in Microsoft, Cisco, firewalls, all of those things. But it's hard to find someone who will qualify you as being knowledgeable in that. Some organizations are coming around. Some schools are coming around, not a lot, to do things like that. I mentioned earlier that my son, one of my sons, has a degree in cloud computing. We had to go to a private school for that because you're not going to find a degree in cloud computing from a four-year state university. They don't have them. So that's one of those challenges. How do you keep track of the latest technologies if the universities aren't going to tell you about them? And maybe that's why they don't. Maybe they just don't want to keep up with that. And I think that's one of the reasons I ended up getting a degree in business, because I was not happy with a degree in computer science. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I did not want to code. So I got a business degree, and then I trained myself. If the university's not going to train, I'm going to train myself or go somewhere else to get trained. And that's what happened. It was the School of Hard Knocks, really. That's one of the big reasons this was created, was because it's so difficult to find a quality form of training and technology that can prepare someone for a position to do these things. And since I've already been through this, and I've already gone up the ranks, and I've already been paid for these types of jobs, I understand just what the value is behind all of this. There is knowledge to be learned. There is a satisfying career to be had. It's inside in the air conditioning. I don't know if I mentioned that, or heating, depending on where you live. And it pays really, really well. There's a good combination there. I think everybody should be looking into that. So that's why I think I'm so excited about the things that we do here, because if the university isn't going to do it, I think that's great, because I will. That's the goal, the piece of it, I think, that really works well. George asked, do I personally use DevOps practices in the field? Well, one could argue nobody really does. DevOps, which is a combination of development on the computer science side and operations, which has traditionally been an IT thing. And I just got finished telling you those things don't really go together. So what we thought was that instead of hiring 2 people, we'll hire 1 person and they'll do both. That didn't work out. The idea of doing something like that did not work out well at all. What DevOps has effectively turned into are developers that can do scripting for the cloud. Maybe a little bit more than scripting because they have more of a knowledge in development, but it really is a development position. I know there are people that have sort of wandered into DevOps from the IT side, and they've kind of got into the DevOps thing, and they write a lot of code. They're now writing code. They've turned themselves into a computer science person is what they've done. Because DevOps, a necessary thing in the cloud to be able to properly implement these technologies, cloud-based technologies, to be able to really make cloud-based technologies dance, you need somebody who can code. And that's why a DevOps person works so well. There's traditionally been a gap or a wall between the people who develop and the people that deploy the applications. And I think what people are trying to do is kind of get rid of so much wall and kind of push those things together a little bit. And in many ways, they've been able to accomplish that with DevOps. But it is still a term that is in flux, that is implemented differently depending on where you go. And really, as it turns out, it's turning out to be more of a computer science position than an IT position. So from my perspective, the DevOps people can go be the computer science folks, and we're going to handle making sure that whatever they're trying to implement continues to be secure, available, and up and running on the network. And that's really the job of IT anyway, is to make all that happen. So that's at least my perspective of it. It's an odd part. It's an odd little niche in our field that got sort of thrown in there. And it just has not grown to the fruition that they originally were hoping, but it does solve a number of challenges that we've had in being able to properly design, implement, and maintain cloud-based technologies. So from that perspective, it's pretty valuable. I don't know that a lot of IT people will lean into DevOps as much as the computer science people will. I think it's a better fit for them than it would be for IT. It's one of those scenarios, though, and I mentioned this earlier, you can spend your life learning how to properly build an application. Turns out you can also spend your life trying to figure out how to properly design and implement a network or a security VPN or a firewall or a SIM or an authentication system or redundant internet connections, or goes on and on and on. You know, all of that has nothing to do with DevOps, has everything to do with ops, has everything to do with IT. So that's the big difference to me. And that's I think, if you go back and forth, that's really where people think about making cloud better, is bringing in a DevOps person to really make it dance a lot. Well, at that point, we've already done our job in IT. We've built the cloud. We've got the instances. They're all available. The network is up and running. The data is secure. All right, we'll go now implement the applications. That's what that does. Will cloud computing be here in 10 years, or will it evolve? It will certainly evolve. It's not going to be the same as it is today, but certainly 10 years from now, cloud computing will absolutely be around. Why would it not? It's amazing. Extends and provides capabilities we've never had before. In fact, if you're on ProfessorMesser.com right now, then you're on a cloud computing device. You're on a cloud server. I just carved it out of whatever they had there, built it up, put some CPU in it, put some memory on it, put some storage space on it. Boom, web server. There you go. That's how easy it is. That's how it works. Another point in the chat room is coding is also getting streamlined with training software and more abstract languages. I don't care. Don't care. It's computer science. I don't care because I don't code. Now, somebody who does coding, is really into coding, they're all about it. That's fine. That's great. But an IT person, not really interested in learning how to code. Don't want to know how to code. Don't need to know how to code. I need to spend my time understanding how to properly design and implement a redundant set of next generation firewalls that are set up in an active-active configuration where I've got BGP on this side of the firewall, I'm probably going to need to do some type of route redistribution on the inside to OSPF, and I need to implement some type of log transfer over to my SIM, and I need to create reports from that every month. So there's no coding there. That's sort of my point. The coding part is the realm of the computer science folks. And if you're into coding, rock on. Keep doing it. We need your coders. Keep coding. Please keep doing what you're doing on the coding side. We need lots of people doing good coding. But an IT person doesn't do any coding. And in fact, the reason I sort of ended up in IT, and this isn't a coding live stream, is I like IT and I don't like coding. So that's the difference, is that I think coding probably is getting streamlining with training software. There probably are more abstract languages out there. Man, I've completely lost interest in the conversation when we talk about abstract languages and software development. I'm just not in that zone. That's not my gig. That's not my thing. So of course I'm not going to be interested in that. But if you want to talk firewalls and switches and routers and fiber and copper and all of those things, I am in. We can talk all day about that stuff, and we can talk about the future. We can talk about what we're doing with it today. We can talk about all this big data. We can talk about all of these things. But at the coding part, and in fact, you should probably consider that too. When you need to pick a career, are you going to code or are you going to be an IT person? You can't be both. There's just too much to know. You'll never know everything you need to know to be in the world of application development. You'll never know everything there is to know in the world of IT. So you need to pick one of those and grow into that. And it's fair to like both. Maybe during the day, you manage routers and switches and firewalls, and then you come home at night and you build your own mobile apps. I think that's great. I think in fact, if that's what you like to do, please do that. In fact, I would love to be able to have those skills to be able to make that happen. But that's just not my thing. I just don't like it. Everybody has a different set of likes and dislikes. So that's, from my perspective, that's exactly my goal and objective, is to stick on the IT side. But if you like it, go for it. What about command line code? It's not code. That's scripting. So that's where we get into semantics. That's where we get into the terms that we use. Yes, technically a batch file is coding. Technically, a PowerShell script is coding. Yes, got it. I understand, but it's not really. I consider coding to be you're building an app. You're building a mobile app. You're building a web app. That's coding. That's someone who's learning to code. You're understanding the nuances of object-oriented development. You have different libraries that you've created. You are manipulating where and configuring where all of this is stored in memory. You're accessing those arrays and pulling it down and manipulating the data to put it in another set of arrays. You're sticking data from that array and you're putting it into it goes on and on. I don't do any of that. Not my thing. But I can build you some scripts. You will be appalled when you see the scripts and how they are written, but I can build you some scripts that can automate things. In fact, much of what I do on this side of the screen is there's a lot of automation that takes place. And so that's why I mention that. So you got to pick at least one to be able to go through those. Pick at least one part of the network design, the part of the IT world, part of the technology world, whether it's IT or coding. Pick the side and go with it. And I think you'll be much more focused in your job hunt than not. No one's really going to hire a Cisco certified person who focuses on writing C++ apps. That's not a thing. Those don't go together. You need to do one or the other. We need someone who either manages their Cisco, or we need somebody who can build an app. Not both of those things. That's not what we're looking for. Most companies don't want something like that. They want really focused on one of those or the other. Scripting, is learning scripting in a command line that useful, or is a GUI okay to focus on? Well, most scripting is done at the command line. Most scripting is writing some type of command at a command prompt or in a text editor. So there is scripting there to be to pull from. What IT security jobs do not require coding? All of them, because coding is writing apps, and we don't write apps in IT. IT security jobs do a lot of scripting. So there you go. All IT jobs require scripting. Being able to script, and well, here's an example. So I wrote some scripts when I was a systems engineer for Next Generation Firewall Company, and I wrote some scripts that would go out to a firewall using the firewall's API, it's Application Programming Interface. This sounds a lot like coding. It's not. It's scripting. And I wrote scripts that would query the firewall, pull back the configuration, store it in, compress it up, and then store it and maintain it as a backup over a certain number of days. So that normally you'd have to buy these, $10,000 pieces of software to do this that did a lot of other things. But what if you just needed backups? Well, that's what it would do. The script would go out every day. It would fire off at 3 in the morning. Fire off at 3 in the morning. It would then go out to the firewall, pull down the configuration, compress it, stick it in that day, store it, and then go to the next firewall and just keep all of them. That was a great script. But it really took advantage of a lot of things that you would think would be coding related. It accessed an API on the firewall, which really sounds fancy, but it's really just asking the firewall for information and it giving information to you. And at the time, I used a Perl library because that's all that was available for that firewall. So I wrote it in Perl. No, well, that's what most things are written in on the web anyway, so that made sense. These days, there are libraries for that firewall that are Python and other scripting languages as well. But today I could use Python. I could do the same thing because there's a Python library for that. Being able to write to a library, have the library do the work is much easier than you having to manually write to the API and have that API respond to you. So that's what I used for that scenario. And then it created a number of reports and showed you here's where the backups were. It was a great little system. And I wrote some other little scripts that would grab statistics, that would build out stats on how the firewall was running, that would create some graphs. It's pretty interesting. Just to really try out the API of the firewall. And if you have a knowledge of scripting, that's a relatively simple thing to put together. I think I did that particular project in a weekend. Just sat down, wrote a backup scripts for these, and in a weekend we were done. It was a project we were doing for work. And everybody had to write their own little project for it, and that's the one I did. So that's useful. That was a useful little utility, but it wasn't an application. It's not something you would put on an iPhone. Hey, I got a new app. It takes backups from a firewall. That's not what that does. Nobody from the accounting department is going to log in and use that to be able to do something. That's not what it was written. It was just a script that did one particular function that integrated with the API of the firewall and brought down the data and did something with the data. That's the beauty of the scripting. And it was never intended to be anything fancier than that, nor would it ever be really. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about learning to script, learning Python, learning PowerShell, learning Perl, learning batch files, learning a shell script. That's what you should be doing with it, is having those things happen. This meant that when I came into work, I wouldn't have to now connect to every firewall manually and download the latest configuration every day and back it up manually. It did it automatically. I didn't even have to think about it. Once I wrote the script, I just said, run at 3 a.m. every day, and I just left it. I never thought about it other than to check in. Did it work? Read the log of the day. Would send me a log when it finished saying, here's what we did. Everything worked great. Like, okay, I just check it every day, and everything was fine. I could have even set up the script to only tell me when things go wrong so that I can then go fix it. That would be good things to do as well. But that's a really good example of how scripting is different than coding and how scripting is incredibly important for someone in IT and why you should really be familiar and flexible enough to learn these fundamentals of scripting so that if you script in PowerShell, you should be able to relatively easily transfer that knowledge into other scripting languages. So you should be able to script at a shell script on Linux. You should be able to script in with Python. So you can do it in any operating system. Those are things that become important too with all of this. A couple of other questions in here too. This is a pretty good one because this goes into the exam objectives. Can a campus area network, or is a CAN a control area network? Well, you bring up a good point. According to the CompTIA exam objectives, a CAN is a campus area network. There it is. Literally black and white, spelled out for you. Now, however, there's absolutely, if you go look at it, control area networks that are out there. And so you have that option as well. I don't think control area networks are necessarily spelled out in the exam objectives, but you'll probably run across references to these wherever you may go. What is that? What did they put in the back of it? They have campus area network in the back of the exam objectives. A CAN is campus area network. They don't list specifically out a control area network, but when we start talking about industrial systems, and that certainly is in the exam objectives. Let's see where it is. Industrial control systems, ICS. So a good example of an ICS is the CAN bus that is in your car. There is a big network inside of your automobile that is a control area network, CAN, and it's on a bus type network. You remember from the video that talks about ring networks and star networks and bus networks. And in your car is a bus network, and there's CAN bus, is what that's called. And so there are actual control area networks. That's both of those are certainly CAN networks. So that could certainly be that way. Now, if you're on a CompTIA Network Plus and they say, what's a CAN? Well, the only thing listed as CAN in the exam objectives is they're referring to a campus area network. So that's probably what they're referring to. But you're never going to be in a situation on the exam where you're not sure what they're talking about. There's always context. There's never anything vague. Someone talked to me the other day and said there were a lot of trick questions. And I kind of had to tell them, well, if you don't know the topic, everything's a trick question. If you aren't familiar with the topics, they all seem like they're trick questions. They're not trick questions on the exam. On the exam, the right answer should just, boom, be right in front of you. It should be very obvious what the right answer is. That's the way they're written. And if it seems like there could be one or two or even three answers, then you're probably not understanding exactly what they're asking for. That's what I find on the exams, is they're very straight and to the point. If you know the content, it'll be very obvious exactly what's there. I think that's the way it works. This is we'll do it's 3 o'clock. So I think that's probably a good place to stop for what we're doing. I know when my voice starts going out, that's probably time to not do so much of this anymore. We can kind of take it down a notch and stop talking so much. And at some point, I think you're probably sick of this too. So let's not push it while we have a chance, right? I want to appreciate you being here, though, and sticking through it and putting up with my talking and question answering. I sure appreciate you being here. We always have a good first hour where I ask you the new questions. I've got to now go write a bunch of new questions for next week, where we have a Security Plus study group. I believe it's the same time and date next week, Wednesday at noon Eastern. These things tend to change, so always check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. That's always a good place to go, because sometimes things change on my side, sometimes very quickly, and I always update that calendar so you'll know exactly when the next event is going to be. Right now, it's scheduled for next week on Wednesday, I believe. So that's the place to check in. I should probably confirm that before we finish up this call. Wouldn't that be good on this live stream? If I look at my calendar, come back here on the 24th. It is indeed on Wednesday, the 24th at 12 noon is our Security Plus study group, where we effectively do the same thing, except it's for Security Plus. So we'd love to have you back for that one as well. There's a lot more to see and do on the website. Don't forget about the Network Plus course that we have there, along with our course notes and Success Bundle. can find it all at professormesser.com. We sure appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining us in the first hour and your questions here in the second hour. We couldn't do this without you. We appreciate your support. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.